The first thing Elias Crow saw after the ship exploded was a girl chewing raw bark. She had wolf ears, gray skin from hunger, and a rusted slave collar locked around her throat. Blood ran from her cracked lips. Around her, more beastkin women crawled through the black sand, digging for beetles beneath the wreckage while the sea vomited burning corpses onto the shore. Then Elias felt the dagger still buried in his back. Cassian Vale stood above him in a clean white coat, untouched by the wreck, smiling like a man admiring his own cleverness. You were always useful as bait. Behind Cassian, the surviving members of the expedition avoided Elias's eyes. The priestess Mira clutched the azure compass they had stolen from his bag. The guild guards held the only lifeboat steady. Crates of food, water, medicine, and mana stones were stacked at their feet. Everything Elias had found inside the sunken shrine now belonged to them. At least, that was what they believed. Cassian kicked him off the broken mast. Elias crashed onto the shore beside a dead sailor. His ribs shifted. The dagger twisted deeper. Salt water flooded his mouth. Mira frowned at the starving beast girls gathering near the trees. Should we take any of them? Cassian laughed. Why waste supplies? This island is already their grave. The wolf-eared girl stared at the bread in his hand. Cassian noticed. He tore the loaf in half, let her reach for it, then threw both pieces into the waves. The guild guards laughed. Elias did not. He watched the beast girl stumble after the bread, fall to her knees, and claw at the foam while Cassian climbed into the lifeboat. The azure compass glowed against Mira's chest. Its needle pointed toward Elias. Not north. Not safety. Him. Mira covered it quickly. Cassian never noticed. Enjoy your kingdom, he called. King of corpses. The oars struck the water. The lifeboat pulled away. The surviving expedition members left Elias among the hungry, the dying, and the dead. The sun burned white above the island. The jungle behind the beach whispered with things too large to be animals. Elias lay still until the boat became a pale speck on the horizon. Then the dead sailor beside him opened his eyes. Cold blue fire ignited inside the corpse's skull. A voice without sound pressed through Elias's mind. The abandoned heir has entered the Isle of Last Breath. The authority sealed inside death has recognized a master. The first law has awakened. What the living discard, the grave sovereign may claim. Elias blinked once. The pain remained. The hunger remained. The dagger remained. But beneath all of it, something vast had opened. It felt like a door buried behind his soul. On the other side stood an endless night filled with waiting footsteps. The corpse sailor twitched. Elias placed a hand on its forehead. Memories struck him. Ropes snapping in storms. Knots tied blindfolded. Hulls patched during battle. Sails cut to catch weak wind. Hidden compartments beneath the expedition ship. Cassian ordering the powder room sabotaged before the shrine team returned. So the explosion had not been an accident. The sailor's memories faded. A new instinct surfaced. A corpse could be raised. A raised corpse could retain the skills carved deepest into its flesh and spirit. A useful dead man was not merely a soldier. He was labor, knowledge, industry, war. Elias smiled. It was a small smile, calm enough to frighten anyone who knew him. Stand. The corpse rose. Water poured from its torn uniform. Broken fingers snapped straight. Blue fire burned brighter in its eyes. It bowed its head. The beast girls screamed. Several fled toward the jungle. The wolf-eared girl did not. She was too weak to run. She picked up a jagged shell and placed herself between Elias and three younger beastkin huddled beneath a strip of sailcloth. Her arms shook. Her eyes did not. Elias respected that. He pulled the dagger from his back. Black blood stained the blade. The wound should have killed him, yet threads of cold energy wrapped around the torn flesh, slowing the bleeding. Not healing. Preserving. Death magic did not care whether he felt pain. It only cared whether he had finished using the body. Elias pointed toward the wreckage. Fine cloth, rope, water containers. Anything sealed. The drowned sailor moved immediately. He did not stagger like a mindless corpse. He climbed over the broken hull with a deckhand's balance and tore open panels with practiced hands. The wolf girl stared. Elias sat against a crate and inspected the beach. There were nearly 36 beast girls visible between the rocks and tree line. Wolves, cats, rabbits, foxes, goats, a broad-shouldered Birkin woman with a shattered leg. All wore collars. All were thin enough that bone pressed against skin. A slave transport had wrecked here before his expedition arrived. No rescue had come. The island had eaten the rescuers too. The sailor returned carrying a waxed medical case, a coil of rope, and a copper flask. The flask held rainwater. Elias drank a mouthful. Then he tossed it to the wolf girl. She caught it by instinct. The others stared at her. She stared at Elias. Why? Because dead workers are abundant. His voice remained flat. Living scouts are not. She understood the calculation. That made things easier. She drank only a little, then passed the flask to the youngest rabbit-eared girl. Good. Not greedy. Potentially useful. Elias opened the medical case. Most of the bottles had shattered, but a curved needle, thread, alcohol, and 2 packets of clotting powder remained. His fingers were steady as he stitched his own back. The wolf girl watched every movement. What are you? Stranded. That answer disturbed her more than a boast would have. A roar rolled out of the jungle. Birds burst from the canopy. The beast girls froze. The barken woman whispered, "Sand prowler." The black sand near the tree line erupted. A creature shaped like a panther dragged itself into the sunlight, except it had 6 legs, a jaw that split to the neck, and translucent skin stretched over moving bone. Its belly was swollen from a recent kill. The starving beast girls scattered. The prowler chose the weakest target, the rabbit child with the water flask. Elias did not stand. Intercept. The drowned sailor sprinted. The prowler struck him hard enough to cave in his chest. Claws ripped through dead flesh. The sailor locked both arms around the monster's neck and held on. No scream, no fear, no instinct to survive. Only obedience. Elias picked up Cassian's dagger and walked forward. The prowler thrashed. Its tail shattered the sailor's knee. Its rear claws opened his abdomen. The corpse tightened its grip. Elias drove the dagger through the monster's eye. The blade reached the brain. The prowler convulsed. The sailor dragged it down. Elias twisted the weapon until the roaring stopped. Silence swallowed the beach. The beast girls stared at the dead monster, then at Elias, then at the ruined sailor still kneeling despite the hole in his chest. The invisible door behind Elias's soul opened wider. The prowler's corpse was fresh, powerful, hungry even in death. He placed his palm on its skull. Another flood of memories entered him. Moonlit hunts, underground dens, the taste of poisoned crabs, fear of bells hidden deep in the island, a nesting ground near a spring, a pale giant sleeping beneath stone roots. More importantly, Elias felt the monster's strongest trait. Its bones could soften while moving, letting it squeeze through gaps smaller than its skull. A perfect scout, a perfect assassin. But the power demanded a cost. The corpse needed death energy. Elias possessed only what had seeped into him from the drowned sailor and the beach's fresh dead. If he raised every body carelessly, he would empty himself. So he chose. Rise. Black mist poured from the prowler's wounds. Its flesh tightened around the bones. The crushed eye became a blue flame behind a veil of translucent skin. It lowered all 6 legs and pressed its head to the sand. The beast girls recoiled. The wolf girl whispered, "You made it kneel." Elias looked toward the jungle. No. His gaze sharpened. "I made it useful." He named the drowned sailor Brine. He named the prowler Slip. Names were more than convenience. The moment he gave them, their presence became clearer inside the dark space behind his soul. He could sense their position, their condition, their hunger for command. Brine's chest was destroyed, but his hands still worked. Slip's body had retained its speed, but death had removed the need to breathe. Distinct tools. Different roles. The beginning of structure. Elias ordered Slip to enter the jungle and locate the spring from its memories. He ordered Brine to search the wreckage for blades, nails, tools, and sealed food. Then he turned to the beast girls. "You can keep starving here." No one moved. "Or you can work." The Barken woman glared at him. "For a master? For food?" Same chain. Elias glanced at the collars around their throats. "Then break the old chain before accusing me of forging a new one." He tossed Cassian's dagger to the wolf girl. "Cut hers." The dagger struck the Barken woman's collar. A spark flashed. The blade flew from the wolf girl's hand. A curse mark ignited on the metal ring. The Barken woman screamed as red veins spread across her neck. Elias caught her before she fell. The collar was not merely locked. It was linked to the life of whoever wore it. Brute force would kill them. The slave traders had designed the collars to survive wrecks, rebellions, and rescue attempts. Elias examined the rune pattern. He knew little about cursecraft, but somewhere on this island, dead slavers might know everything. That thought changed the entire problem. The living had lost the knowledge needed to free the beast girls. The dead might still possess it. A civilization did not begin with walls. It began with answers. Slip returned before sunset. It emerged from beneath a fallen tree without making a sound. Mud coated its legs. In Elias's mind, it delivered images rather than words. A spring hidden beyond thorn vines. 3 prowler cubs. A nest of red wasps. Stone ruins. Human bones hanging from iron hooks. And movement beneath the water. Elias led the beast girls to the spring. They followed because thirst defeated fear. Brian carried the barren woman. Slip ranged ahead. Elias walked last, hiding how badly his stitched wound burned. The jungle tried to kill them before they crossed the first ridge. Vines tightened around ankles. Flowers spat numbing dust. A bird with a spear-shaped beak dove from the canopy. Slip caught it in midair and crushed its neck. Elias stored the corpse inside the darkness behind his soul. That surprised him. The dead space was not merely a place of command. It could preserve bodies, a shadow granary for future soldiers. Useful, dangerously useful. At the spring, the beast girls drank until their stomachs hurt. Elias rationed the last sealed biscuits from the wreck. Some hated him for stopping them. That did not matter. People who had starved for weeks could die from eating too quickly. He had seen it during the border famine. He divided them by ability. Those with strong noses searched for edible roots. Those with sharp eyes watched the canopy. Those with steady hands cleaned salvage. The foxskin girl who could read trademarks inspected the surviving crates. The barren woman, still injured, directed shelter construction from the ground. Elias asked names only after giving tasks. The wolf girl was Lyra. The barren was Mara. The foxskin was Sable. The rabbit child was Nia. They expected speeches. He gave them work. By nightfall, they had water, a fire, a roof of sailcloth, and thin soup made from shellfish, roots, and the edible organs of the sand prowler's last kill. It was not comfort. It was survival organized into shape. Beyond the firelight, Brian kept working. Hammering, dragging, building racks from wreckage. The sound unsettled the beast girls. Dead men were supposed to rot. This one was constructing a camp. Lyra sat across from Elias. Will you turn us into those things when we die? Yes. Several beast girls flinched. Elias stirred the soup. But I would rather keep you alive. Corpses follow orders. Living people solve problems I have not seen yet. Lyra studied him for a long time. You are honest. No. I am efficient. A bell rang beneath the earth. Every flame bent toward the center of the island. Slip snarled. Blue fire leaked from its jaws. The collars around the beast girls flashed red. Far away, something answered the bell with a heartbeat. The ground trembled. Sable dropped the crate she was examining. Inside lay fragments of old maps, rusted tools, and a metal cylinder marked with the crest of the slave empire. Brian knelt beside it. The dead sailor's fingers touched the seal. A memory that did not belong to him surged through Elias. The shipwrecked slavers had reached the island years ago. They had not died on the beach. They had built a camp. Then a plague spread through them. The survivors dragged their dead inland. The collars began reacting to the underground bell. And beneath the island, the slavers found something so enormous that they tried to bury the entrance with their own ships. Elias opened the cylinder. A map unrolled across his knees. At its center, beneath the mountain, someone had drawn the outline of a colossal skeleton wrapped around a buried city. Not a dragon, not a giant. Something older, something with towers built between its ribs. Beside the drawing, a dying slaver had written a final warning. Do not wake the one whose corpse became the island. Elias felt the darkness behind his soul shudder. For the first time, countless unseen footsteps stopped moving. Even the dead space was afraid. He looked toward the mountain. Then he smiled. The starving beast girls thought he had found a monster. Elias knew better. He had found the foundation of a kingdom, and somewhere beneath their feet, the greatest corpse on the island had just opened one eye. The eye beneath the mountain closed again. The pressure vanished. Every beast girl around the spring collapsed as though an invisible hand had released their throats. Elias remained standing. Only his shadow moved. It stretched toward the mountain, thin and hungry, before snapping back beneath his feet. The buried corpse had noticed him. That was enough for now. Trying to command it would be suicide. The smallest fragment of its presence had silenced every undead instinct inside his soul. Whatever had died beneath the island was far beyond his authority. But corpses did not grow impatient. Neither did Elias. He rolled up the slaver's map and sealed it inside his coat. We leave before sunrise. Mara stared at him from the shelter. You finally see how cursed this place is? No. Elias looked toward the mountain. I see why no one has claimed it. Before Mara could answer, a horn sounded from the coast. Lyra's ears rose. A second horn followed. Then came the clang of a ship's bell. Hope exploded through the camp. Several beast girls ran toward the ridge. A rescue ship? They came back. Someone found us. Elias did not move. Cassian had returned too quickly. A man who abandoned starving slaves did not suddenly discover compassion during the night. Slip vanished into the brush at Elias's command. Through the prowler's eyes, he saw the beach. A sleek expedition vessel had anchored beyond the reef. Its sails carried the golden lion of the Vale family. Armed men unloaded crates while Cassian stood at the bow in polished armor. Mira stood beside him. The azure compass still pointed inland, still pointed toward Elias. Cassian had finally noticed. That was why he had returned, not for survivors, for whatever the compass believed Elias possessed. Brian began packing tools. Elias stopped him. Keep building. Lyra frowned. You are going to meet them? They came to perform. He took the rusted slaver cylinder and handed it to Sable. Hide the map. If I do not return before midday, lead everyone north. Slip will guide you. You think they will kill you? They already tried. That answer silenced her. Elias walked to the beach alone. He dragged one foot slightly. He lowered his shoulders. He let his face tighten with exhaustion. By the time he emerged from the jungle, he looked like a wounded man barely clinging to life. Cassian's expression brightened. The expedition members gathered behind him. Some had been on the original ship. Others were fresh guild hunters brought from the mainland. They wore clean armor and carried full water skins. The same people who had left Elias to die now stared at him as though his survival offended them. Mira rushed forward. Elias. Her voice cracked beautifully. She had always been talented at crying when witnesses were present. We thought you were dead. Elias looked at the armed men surrounding her. You sailed away. Cassian stepped between them. The reef was collapsing. We had wounded people aboard. I made the only responsible decision. A guild officer nodded. Several hunters murmured agreement. Cassian continued with practiced sorrow. We returned the moment the azure compass revealed another survivor. The compass needle trembled toward Elias's chest. Mira covered it with both hands. Cassian smiled warmly. So, tell us. What did you find? There it was. No question about his wound. No question about the starving beastkin. Only treasure. Elias let his knees weaken. Ruins. Greed flashed across Cassian's face before concern replaced it. What kind of ruins? Slaver camp. Inland. Mira touched his arm. You should give us the location. You are injured. Let the capable hunters investigate. Elias studied her hand. That same hand had removed the azure compass from his bag while Cassian stabbed him. You want the map. Her expression trembled. This is not about what I want. The expedition was funded by the guild. Any discovery belongs to everyone. The crowd approved. A hunter spat near Elias's boot. You should be grateful they came back for you. Another laughed. He probably hid while the rest of us fought to survive. Cassian raised a hand, pretending to defend him. Enough. Elias has suffered. He removed a silver flask and offered it. The sweet smell of healing tonic drifted from its mouth. Elias recognized the bitter trace beneath it. Moonroot. A sedative. Strong enough to paralyze a wounded man. He accepted the flask. Cassian watched closely. Elias drank. The tonic touched his tongue. He let it slide into the cold pocket of death energy surrounding his stomach. The magic did not destroy the poison. It preserved it, suspended it, stored it like a corpse waiting for command. Elias swayed. Cassian caught his shoulder. Easy. Behind the kindness, his fingers searched Elias's coat. They found nothing. Elias had left the map with Sable. Mira knelt beside him. We can help you. You only need to trust us. I found a key. Every greedy eye sharpened. Elias reached into his sleeve and produced a black iron token recovered from the slaver cylinder. It bore the same crest as the collars. Sable had identified it as an overseer's seal, useful, but incomplete. The slaver ruins would probably contain several. Cassian did not know that. He saw only ancient metal and forbidden runes. What does it open? he whispered. A vault. That single word poisoned the entire beach. The guild officers stepped closer. The hunters stopped pretending not to listen. Mira squeezed Elias's hand. You cannot carry something so dangerous in your condition. Cassian nodded gravely. For the safety of the expedition, I should hold it. Elias let silence stretch. The crowd grew restless. A swordsman sneered. Do not be selfish. Lord Cassian returned to save you. Another hunter pointed toward the jungle. There could be monsters following him. Make him hand it over. Mira lowered her voice. Please, do not force us to embarrass you. Elias almost smiled. They believed public pressure was a weapon. It was only noise. He placed the iron token in Cassian's palm. Cassian's breath caught. The runes glowed red. A faint pulse passed from the token into his skin. Elias felt it. So did the collars hidden inland. Every slave mark on the island had just recognized a new overseer. Cassian closed his fingers around the seal. Triumph filled his face. Then he concealed it behind sympathy. You made the right choice. The crowd praised his wisdom. Someone called Elias a coward. Someone else called him useless. Mira helped him stand, making certain everyone saw her kindness. Cassian slipped the token beneath his armor. Lead us to the ruins. Elias shook his head. The poison is working. Cassian's eyes narrowed for the smallest instant. Then he laughed. What poison? Elias collapsed. Mira caught him. Cassian leaned close enough that no one else could hear. You should have died the first time. Elias allowed his breathing to slow. He allowed his muscles to stiffen. He allowed them to drag him beneath a torn canopy near the supply crates. Within moments, the expedition entered the jungle without him. They took every armed hunter, every healer, every mapmaker. Greed made people careless with security. Only 2 guards remained near the shore. Elias waited until their voices faded. Then he opened his eyes. The stored moonroot gathered beneath his palm as a drop of dark liquid. He pressed it into the sand. A crab crawled over it, twitched, and fell motionless. Useful poison. He stored the dead crab. One guard noticed him standing. What the hell? Slip dropped from the trees. Its translucent body folded through a gap between crates and unfolded behind the man. 6 dead limbs struck at once. The guard never screamed. The second reached for his horn. Brine rose from beneath the wreckage and pulled him backward into the surf. Elias walked to the water's edge. The man thrashed. Brine held him under. Bubbles stopped rising. 2 fresh corpses. Elias examined them carefully. The first had trained as a tracker. The second had spent years guarding merchant caravans. Neither possessed exceptional combat strength. Raising them would waste energy. He extracted only what mattered. From the tracker, he took memories of traps, footprints, and hidden paths. From the caravan guard, he took knowledge of rationing, inventory, and defensive camp layouts. The corpses remained dead. Elias understood the distinction now. He did not need to raise everybody. Some dead were soldiers. Some were libraries. Some were raw material. He stripped the supply camp. Grain, salt, hooks, axes, medicine, cooking pots, canvas, seeds sealed in wax, a hand mill, 2 cages of living chickens. The Vale expedition had brought enough supplies to establish a permanent outpost. Cassian had delivered the bones of civilization directly to him. Elias sent Brine inland with the first load. Slip dragged the rest beneath camouflage netting. Then Elias followed the memories extracted from the tracker toward the prowler nesting ground. He needed strength before Cassian returned. The forbidden zone began beyond a wall of blue thorns. Living hunters avoided it because the vines sensed body heat. Elias sent Slip first. The undead prowler had no warmth. It moved through the thorns untouched. Elias wrapped himself in wet mud and followed along the path Slip cleared. Beyond the wall stood a hollow filled with bones. 3 prowler cubs fed on a dead giant lizard. Their mother lay nearby. She was larger than Slip, much larger. A broken spear protruded from her flank, but her 6 legs remained coiled with power. She smelled Elias. Her jaw split open. Slip attacked from behind. The mother spun faster than anything her size should move. One claw cut, Slip from shoulder to hip. Another strike smashed him into stone. Elias did not intervene. He watched. Slip rose. The wound closed partially as its bones softened and shifted beneath the skin. The mother struck again. Slip compressed its entire body, flowing beneath her claws like water wrapped in dead flesh. It emerged beneath her chest and tore open the old spear wound. Black blood poured out. The cubs rushed forward. Elias released the dead spear bird from his shadow space. The corpse fell into his hand. Rise. Blue fire filled its empty eyes. The bird launched itself at the first cub. Its beak punched through the cub's throat. Elias crossed the hollow while the mother fought Slip. He scattered the preserved moonroot poison across the giant lizard's exposed organs. The second cub bit into the meat. Its legs failed. The third cub leaped at Elias. He stepped aside. The tracker's stolen memory showed him how predators shifted before striking. He caught the cub's front leg with a rope loop, used its momentum, and slammed it into the rock. The cub recovered instantly. Elias did not. Pain ripped through his stitched back. Blood soaked his shirt. The cub lunged again. The undead bird struck its eye. Elias drove a salvaged hook beneath its jaw and pulled until bone cracked. Across the hollow, the mother prowler crushed Slip's skull against a tree. The blue fire in Slip's eye flickered. Something cold surged through Elias's connection. An undead could be destroyed. The soul imprint could be lost. But Slip did not retreat. It flattened its broken skull, squeezed beneath the mother's body, then hardened its spine like a blade. Bone erupted through the mother's chest. She roared. Slip climbed inside her. Its dead claws shredded organs from within. The mother staggered toward Elias, tearing at her own flesh to reach the thing burrowing through her. Elias waited. One step. Another. Then the moonroot entered her bloodstream through the wounded cub blood on the ground. Her legs buckled. Slip burst from her back. The mother prowler fell. Silence returned to the hollow. Elias stood among the corpses. His breathing was controlled. His wound was not. Blood ran down his side. He placed a hand on the mother prowler's head. The darkness behind his soul opened. This corpse was stronger than brine. Stronger than Slip. Its body carried the scars of hundreds of hunts. Its senses reached through stone. Its bloodline contained a rare instinct that allowed it to command younger prowlers through fear. But raising it required more death energy than Elias possessed. Unless he sacrificed something, the answer appeared naturally. He looked at the 3 cub corpses. Merge the lesser dead. Feed their remaining force into the superior vessel. Evolution through sacrifice. Not creation from nothing. A kingdom of death obeyed economy as surely as a living one. Elias placed the cubs around their mother. Black threads emerged from his fingers. The cubs collapsed inward. Flesh became mist. Bones became pale liquid. Their memories, instincts, and unfinished growth poured into the mother's body. The wounded flesh tightened. The spear scar vanished. A crown of curved bone rose along her skull. When her eyes opened, the fire inside them was not blue. It was violet. Slip lowered its body. The undead bird folded its wings. Even Brine, far away near the spring, paused and bowed toward the hollow. A hierarchy had formed without Elias speaking. The mother prowler stood. She was his first elite undead. Her mind was sharper than Slip's. Not human. Not mindless. A disciplined predator capable of receiving intent rather than simple commands. Elias named her Vesper. The name entered the shadow space like a throne taking shape. Vesper knelt. Her forehead touched the blood-stained earth. Elias rested one hand on her crown. Guard the living. Vesper vanished into the blue thorns. Elias returned to camp near sunset. The beast girls stared as Brine carried sacks of grain from the stolen supplies. Naya hugged a chicken as though it were treasure. Mara inspected the axes. Sable ran her hands over the sealed seeds. For the first time, their camp smelled like cooked food instead of fear. Elias did not celebrate. He organized. A rationing station near the spring. A guarded storage pit above the floodline. A smokehouse beside the rock wall. Waste trenches downhill from the water. Rotating watches. Teams for fishing, gathering, shelter, and salvage. The beast girls expected him to distribute food equally. He did not. Workers received full portions. The injured received what they needed to recover. Children received smaller meals more often. Anyone hiding supplies lost access to the next distribution. Harsh rules. Necessary rules. By nightfall, no one was chewing bark. Lyra watched Vesper patrol beyond the fire. That thing is different from the others. She is stronger. No. Lyra's ears flattened. She understands us. Vesper stopped. Her violet eyes turned toward Lyra. Then she resumed walking. Elias looked toward the southern ridge where Cassian's expedition had disappeared. So does the island. Far inside the jungle, Cassian placed the iron seal against a stone gate. The gate opened. Red light flooded the ruins. The hunters cheered. Mira smiled. Cassian lifted the token above his head as the ancient slaver mechanisms awakened around them. They believed they had found a vault. They had found a command chamber. Across the island, every slave collar ignited. The beast girls screamed. Elias turned as red chains of light rose from their throats and stretched toward the distant ruins. Inside the command chamber, the iron seal pierced Cassian's palm. It drank his blood. Words appeared across the stone wall. The new overseer has been accepted. All escaped property will now be recalled. Beneath Cassian's feet, something began pulling on every collar. And beneath the mountain, the colossal corpse opened its eye again. The red chains tightened. Lyra hit the ground first. Her claws tore furrows through the soil as the collar dragged her toward the southern ruins. Nia screamed beside the spring. Mara wrapped both arms around a tree, but the invisible force cracked the trunk and pulled her injured body across the mud. Every beast girl was being recalled like stolen property. Elias watched the direction of the chains. Then he looked at Brine, cut the ground beneath them. The dead sailor drove a salvaged axe into the earth. Slip and Vesper attacked the soil with their claws. Within moments, trenches formed around the struggling beastkin. It did not stop the pull, but it gave Elias time. He gripped Lyra's collar. The curse burned his palm. Pain climbed his arm and entered his mind as a command. Return the property. Punish resistance. Obey the overseer. Elias smiled. The order was powerful, but it had made one mistake. It had entered the territory of death. Black mist wrapped around his fingers. He did not try to break the collar. He reached through it. The metal ring had been forged from grave iron. The curse inside it had been fed with the souls of dead prisoners. Every command was carried by their torment. The slavers had built their control system with corpses. That meant the authority belonged to him. Elias closed his hand. Be silent. The screaming inside the collar stopped. Lyra's red chain shattered. Across the camp, every beast girl stared. Elias moved to Mara. Her collar resisted. The soul trapped inside it was older and stronger. It clawed at his thoughts, begging him to end its suffering. Elias extracted the dead presence without hesitation. The collar dimmed. Mara gasped as the chain vanished. A thin shadow rose from the metal and entered the darkness behind Elias's soul. Memories followed. Whips. Auction platforms. Ruins carved into screaming prisoners. A stone workshop hidden inside the southern ruins. A slaver artificer with burned hands and silver teeth. The man had created the collars. He had also died on the island. Elias released Mara and turned toward the mountain path. Hold them as long as possible. Lyra understood immediately. You are going to the ruins. I am going beneath them. The recalled chains pulled harder. Sable cried out. Elias summoned the dead spear bird and ordered it toward the coast. Through its eyes, he saw Cassian's ship, the armed guards, and the supply camp they had rebuilt on the beach. Beyond them, the sea churned with storm clouds. Escape would soon become impossible. Good. Cassian had trapped himself. Elias placed his hand on Vesper's skull. Protect this camp. Kill anything without a collar that enters. Vesper's violet eyes narrowed. She understood. Slip crouched beside him. Brine lifted his axe. Elias took both. They entered the forbidden zone before dawn. The southern jungle had changed. Red light pulsed beneath the roots. Ancient pathways awakened under layers of moss. Stone pillars emerged from the earth, each carved with kneeling beastkin and crowned overseers. The recall command had opened roads sealed for generations. It had also awakened everything buried beside them. The first corpses climbed from the mud near a collapsed shrine. They wore iron masks. Their bodies were wrapped in rotting chains. Hooks replaced their hands. Red fire burned behind the masks. Former slave catchers. The command chamber had called them back to service. A dozen charged Elias. Brine met them head-on. His axe split the first mask. Slip flowed beneath a swinging hook and tore the legs from another. Elias did not waste energy raising the damaged bodies. He extracted their memories while they were still warm with curse power. Paths. Patrol routes. Punishment chambers. Storage tunnels. A sealed elevator leading deeper underground. More hunters appeared farther down the road. Not undead. Living members of Cassian's expedition. They were dragging captured beast girls toward the ruins. The prisoners had hidden in other parts of the island. The recall command exposed them. Cassian's men were collecting them. One hunter struck a catkin woman with the flat of his sword. Move faster. Lord Cassian found the artifact controlling your collars. You belong to the expedition now. The catkin spat blood at his boots. He raised the blade. Slip killed him before it fell. The undead prowler emerged from his shadow and removed his throat. Brian crushed the second hunter's knee. Elias stepped from the trees. The remaining men recognized him. Their fear arrived before their weapons cleared their sheaths. You were poisoned. Elias looked at the prisoners. Run north. Follow the black marks on the trees. The hunters attacked. They had superior equipment. They had training. They had never fought enemies who did not fear injury. Brian allowed a spear to pierce his chest, trapped the shaft between his ribs, and dragged its owner close enough to break his neck. Slip squeezed through a hunter's open helmet and expanded inside it. Bone cracked. Blood sprayed through the visor. Elias moved between them with Cassian's dagger. He struck tendons, arteries, eyes. No wasted motion. The final hunter dropped his sword. Wait, I was only following orders. Elias placed 2 fingers against his forehead. So were the collars. He extracted the man's memories before the body hit the ground. Cassian had already entered the lower ruins. Mira had discovered that the Iron Seal could activate old slaver weapons. The guild officer wanted to claim the ruins for the mainland council. Cassian wanted the artifact beneath the mountain. And every member of the expedition believed Elias had died from the poison. Their certainty was useful. Elias raised only one hunter, a thin man with sharp eyes, who had mapped most of the island's southern region. The corpse stood. Blue fire replaced panic. Elias named him Pike. Pike became the first scout beneath Slip's authority. The hierarchy shifted. Vesper remained the guardian beast. Slip became master of hunters and infiltrators. Brian commanded laborers and physical soldiers. Pike knelt to Slip without being ordered. The army was learning structure. Elias continued deeper. Every battle gave him more. A dead slaver alchemist retained knowledge of preservatives, acids, and antiseptics. A chained ogre corpse retained the strength to move stones that living workers could not lift. A burned beastkin cook remembered which island plants caused fever and which reduced it. A blind prisoner remembered hidden tunnels by counting steps. Elias took them all. Some became soldiers. Some surrendered memories. Some were stored inside the shadow space for later. By midday, Brian no longer walked alone. Behind him marched chained enforcers with blue eyes, skeletal diggers carrying rusted picks, and the massive ogre bearing supplies across one shoulder. Slip led prowler corpses through the trees. Pike marked paths. The spearbird circled overhead with 3 newly raised carrion hawks. The army had stopped being a collection of bodies. It had become a machine. Elias reached the stone workshop before Cassian's men. The entrance lay beneath a statue of an overseer holding a collar above kneeling slaves. Elias destroyed the statue's arm. Behind it, he found a narrow door. Inside waited rows of iron rings. Hundreds. Some were unfinished. Some still contained souls. At the center of the workshop sat the slaver artificer. His corpse had been nailed to a chair. Silver teeth gleamed inside a dried grin. Burned hands rested on a table covered in tools. A black spike pierced his skull, preventing his spirit from escaping. Elias read the inscription beneath him. The creator had been executed by his own masters after attempting to disable the collars. Interesting. The man who built the chains had eventually tried to break them. Elias removed the spike. The corpse inhaled. Silver eyes opened. It did not attack. It looked at Elias's shadow, saw the countless dead waiting inside, and lowered its head. A voice scraped from its ruined throat. Are they still wearing my sin? Yes. Then command me. The artificer's name had been Orin. He possessed little combat strength, but his memories were more valuable than 100 warriors. He knew curse metals, soul channels, rune locks, storage crystals, defensive formations. Most importantly, he knew how to remove the collars without killing those who wore them. Elias raised him. Orin's blue fire burned silver. He became the first craftsman among the dead. Brian bowed to him in matters of construction. The skeletal diggers lowered their tools. A new branch formed inside the hierarchy. Labor, hunting, craft. Each role strengthened the whole. Orin examined the overseer's command flowing through the island. The seal is incomplete. Cassian does not know. He will. Orin pointed beneath the workshop. When the seal drinks enough blood, it will summon its missing half. What is the missing half? The punishment crown. Elias had seen it in the buried memories. A device made for the High Overseer. It did not control collars. It consumed resistance and converted suffering into power. Cassian believed he had found a treasure. In truth, the seal was preparing him as a vessel. Elias left the curse to ripen. He ordered Orin north with the ogre and several guards. The artificer would begin removing collars one at a time. Then Elias descended alone with Brine and Slip. The sealed elevator had collapsed long ago, but the shaft remained. Brine anchored a rope. Slip climbed along the wall. Elias lowered himself into darkness. The shaft passed through layer after layer of the island. Natural stone became black bone. Roots became veins. Warm air rose from below with the smell of ancient decay. They were no longer descending through a mountain. They were entering the colossal corpse. At the bottom waited a city between ribs. Buildings of carved ivory lined a cavern so vast that its ceiling vanished into darkness. Bridges stretched across organs turned to stone. Rivers of pale death energy flowed through channels cut into the floor. Thousands of corpses stood frozen along the streets. Soldiers, priests, beastkin warriors, winged creatures in broken armor, all facing the same direction. At the far end of the city stood a tomb shaped like a throne. The eye beneath the mountain watched from behind it. Elias stepped forward. Every frozen corpse turned its head. The city awakened. A voice entered his mind. An heir who cannot command himself cannot command the dead. The first trial began without warning. Brine attacked him. The dead sailor's axe stopped a breath from Elias's neck. Slip sprang from the darkness, jaws closing around his arm. Their blue fire had turned red. The buried entity had seized his undead. Elias did not resist with force. He released the connections. Brine's axe continued forward. Elias ducked. Slip tore through his coat. The trial expected him to cling to control. Instead, he abandoned it. A ruler who feared losing servants would become their prisoner. Elias moved through the streets while his own undead hunted him. Brine knew his habits. Slip knew his scent. Every corpse in the city blocked the exits. Elias used their strengths against them. He led Slip through a field of narrow bone pillars, forcing the prowler to soften its body. Then he triggered an ancient pressure plate. Pike's memories had taught him to recognize. The pillars closed. Slip became trapped while compressed. Elias did not destroy it. He continued. Brine cornered him near a river of death energy. The sailor swung. Elias caught the axe handle and stepped into the strike. You repaired ships during storms. Brine hesitated. A memory surfaced behind the red fire. Broken masts. Drowning sailors. Hands bleeding around rope. Identity remained. Control had not erased it. Elias drove his forehead into Brine's face. Then repair yourself. Blue flame erupted through one eye. Brine turned the axe and buried it in a corpse approaching from behind Elias. The trial's control shattered. Slip broke free moments later. Its red fire faded. The voice beneath the city returned. Authority without loyalty is temporary. Loyalty without identity is hollow. The second trial began. The frozen army attacked. Elias could not defeat thousands, so he did not fight them. He entered the river of death energy. The current tore at his soul. Every step filled his mind with the final moments of the city's dead. Betrayal, plague, hunger, ritual sacrifice. The ancient Lord of Death had not ruled this place. He had failed to save it. The throne was not an inheritance. It was a warning. At the river's center floated a black crown. Elias reached for it. The dead screamed. The crown offered him absolute control over every corpse in the city. No resistance, no loyalty, no memory, only obedience. It was power greater than anything he possessed. Elias let it sink. The screaming stopped. He had no use for an army emptied of value. A soldier without memory could swing a blade. A dead farmer knew soil. A dead mason knew walls. A dead mother knew sacrifice. Civilization required more than puppets. The river split. Beneath the rejected crown lay a small shard of gray bone. Elias picked it up. The fragment entered his palm. The shadow space expanded violently. Darkness unfolded beyond darkness. Empty plains appeared inside it. Roads of black stone formed beneath marching feet. Towers rose in the distance. His undead capacity multiplied. His command range stretched across the island. More importantly, every corpse stored within the shadow could now recover by absorbing death energy. The army had gained a homeland. The buried voice spoke again. You rejected the crown of slaves, claimed the burden of kings. The tomb opened. A knight sat inside. He wore cracked armor made from white bone. A sword rested across his knees. A cloak of dead shadows hung from his shoulders. Unlike the others, no flame burned in his eyes. He had been waiting in darkness for longer than kingdoms survived. Elias approached. The knight stood. Pressure crushed the streets. Brine fell to one knee. Slip flattened against the ground. The entire frozen city bowed. The knight drew his sword and placed the blade against Elias's throat. Name your kingdom. Elias looked past him. He saw the starving camp, the unfinished shelters, the frightened children, the collars waiting to be broken. He saw Cassian displaying a stolen seal while the curse slowly entered his blood. A place where nothing useful is wasted. The knight remained silent. Then one pale flame ignited inside his helm. What will you offer the living? Work, protection, consequences, and the dead? Purpose. The sword lowered. The knight turned it and drove the point into the street. The city shook. Frozen soldiers struck their fists against their armor. The sound rolled through the corpse beneath the island like thunder. The knight knelt. My blade was buried with a failed sovereign. He raised his head. Let it rise for one who understands hunger. Elias named him Darius. The commander, class undead, opened both eyes. White fire burned beneath his helm. Far above, inside the southern ruins, Cassian stood before cheering hunters with the iron seal raised in his bloody hand. He claimed he had conquered the island's ancient power. He claimed the collars proved his authority. He claimed the distant thunder was the world recognizing him. Then the stone beneath his feet cracked. White fire shone through the gap. Deep below, Darius bowed before Elias. And an entire buried legion waited for its new king to give the first command. Darius did not ask for orders twice. The white flame inside his helm brightened as Elias placed a hand on the commander's shoulder. Wake only those who can still remember why they fought. The knight lowered his head. A command passed through the buried city. Thousands of corpses remained motionless. Then a few began to rise. Not the strongest. Not the largest. The ones whose souls had not surrendered to emptiness. A mason with both arms replaced by stone tools stepped from a collapsed workshop. A winged scout pulled a broken spear from her ribs. 3 armored beastkin emerged from beneath a bridge, still carrying the scars of their final defense. A dead priest opened his eyes beside the river. A pair of skeletal engineers bowed near an ancient gate. The rest stayed frozen. Elias approved. An army built from every available corpse would grow quickly. It would also rot from within. He needed skill, discipline, memory. The buried legion offered all 3, but only if he selected carefully. Darius led him toward the throne tomb. Behind it stood a wall carved with the history of the city. The murals showed beastkin clans crossing the sea during an age of war. They had built towers between the ribs of the colossal corpse and drawn energy from its bones. They had believed the dead titan was merely an island. Then its heart had moved. The first Lord of Death had tried to bind it. He failed. The binding shattered the city. The corpse's dreaming hatred poisoned the rivers, twisted the animals, and awakened the underground bell. The survivors fled upward. Slave fleets found the island generations later and built their command ruins over the sealed entrances. The slavers never understood what they had discovered. They only learned that pain made the island produce power. Elias stared at the final carving. The failed sovereign stood before the colossal eye while his own army collapsed around him. Darius stood beside Elias. He tried to dominate what should have been negotiated with. You remember him. I killed him. The answer came without pride. Darius had served as the sovereign's commander. When his master sacrificed the city to complete the binding, Darius turned his blade against him. He failed to save the people, but he prevented the ritual from consuming their souls. That was why the dead city still possessed memory. That was why Darius had waited. Elias touched the carved eye. The Titan's consciousness stirred deep below. It did not speak. It listened. You can hear us, Elias said. A heartbeat shook dust from the ceiling. Darius tightened his grip on his sword. Elias did not move. I will not bind you. The heartbeat slowed. I will use the death energy leaking from your corpse. I will destroy anything that tries to awaken you. In return, you will stop calling the collars. Silence followed. Then a crack appeared across the mural. A drop of black liquid seeped from the stone. It floated toward Elias and entered his palm. The darkness behind his soul expanded again. A mark formed across his wrist. Not a slave contract. A boundary. The Titan had acknowledged his claim over the upper island while keeping the deeper body forbidden. A reasonable agreement. For now. The red chains pulling the beast girls vanished. Far above, the camp erupted in startled cries. Lyra's collar cooled. Mara released the tree. Naya stopped screaming. Orin looked toward the mountain and understood that the recall command had been severed at its source. Inside the southern command chamber, Cassian's seal cracked. A thin black vein crawled from his palm to his wrist. He hid it beneath his glove. The hunters around him were too busy celebrating to notice. They had opened several vaults filled with old coins, ceremonial weapons, and slaver records. The guild officer declared the expedition a historic success. Mira healed the wounded while praising Cassian's courage. By the time they returned to the coast, they had already rewritten the story. Cassian had defeated the ancient curse. Cassian had claimed the island. Cassian had rescued the surviving beastkin from a rogue magical disturbance. Elias was mentioned only once. A weak researcher presumed dead after abandoning the expedition. The mainland would believe every word. Elias preferred it that way. He returned to the surface through a hidden passage beneath the spring. Darius came with him. The commander had to lower his head to pass through the stone tunnel. His white bone armor carried no rust. His shadow cloak moved even without wind. When he emerged into the camp, every beast girl reached for a weapon. Vesper appeared between them and the night. Her violet eyes burned. Darius looked at her. Vesper growled. The pressure of two commanders collided. Elias walked between them. Enough. Both knelt. The camp became silent. Lyra stared at Elias, then at the ancient knight, then at the prowler queen bowing beside him. You went underground with two corpses. Elias glanced toward the shadow behind him. Brine emerged first, then Slip, then Pike, then the dead mason, the winged scout, the beastkin guardians, the skeletal engineers, the priest, and the ogre laborer. More blue and white eyes appeared inside the tunnel. I returned with workers. Mara laughed once. It was a rough sound. The first true laugh Elias had heard from her. The next several days transformed the camp. Brine organized the dead laborers into shifts that never slept. The mason-shaped black bone into foundation blocks. The engineers restored underground channels leading from the spring. Orin used salvaged metal and curse tools to build a collar removal frame. The process was slow, painful, dangerous. Every collar contained a trapped soul that had to be extracted before the life rune could be separated from the wearer. Lyra volunteered first, not because she trusted Orin, because the others trusted her. She sat inside the frame while silver needles pressed into the iron ring. Orin's burned fingers moved with perfect precision. Elias stood behind him, holding the dead soul inside the curse still. The collar resisted. It flooded Lyra with memories of punishment. Her body shook. Blood ran from her nose. Mara ordered them to stop. Lyra refused. Finish it. Orin turned the final key. The collar opened. No explosion. No red veins. No death. The iron ring fell into Lyra's hands. She stared at it for a long time. Then she threw it into the fire. The camp roared. Some laughed. Some wept. Several beast girls dropped to their knees. Elias did not allow the celebration to last. Remove the others. Freedom was valuable. So was momentum. Orin worked through the night. Each extracted soul entered the shadow realm, where the dead priest guided it toward rest instead of forcing it into service. Elias discovered that willing souls strengthened the domain more than enslaved ones. The difference was enormous. Terror created unstable energy. Purpose created structure. Every freed spirit added clarity to the darkness. Roads extended. Storage halls formed. Watchtowers rose inside the shadow dimension. The army gained more than space. It gained order. Elias established laws before the first permanent wall was complete. No food could be hidden while another worker starved. No living person could be marked, collared, or traded. Any stranger entering the territory surrendered weapons until trust was earned. Every worker received food according to need and contribution. Every injury was reported. Every corpse belonged to the domain until Elias judged whether it held memory worth preserving. Mara challenged the final law. The dead should belong to their families. Elias looked at the graves beside the spring. They do. Then why claim them? Because this island digs them up. He pointed toward the jungle. Prowlers had already tried to drag away 2 bodies. Red insects laid eggs in fresh flesh. The island wasted nothing. Neither would he. If someone dies here, their family chooses whether the body rests, serves, or surrenders its knowledge. But no corpse will be abandoned to rot into a monster. Mara studied him. Then she nodded. That was the beginning of the Living Council, not a council of equals. Elias had no interest in pretending authority did not exist. But each member controlled something he lacked. Lyra became chief scout among the living. Her nose and hearing outperformed most humans, and she could interpret Vesper's hunting signals. Mara oversaw labor, discipline, and disputes. She understood frightened people better than Elias cared to. Sable managed records, supplies, and trade goods. She could identify the origin of almost every crate recovered from the shore. Naya was too young for command, but she possessed an unusual gift. Animals calmed around her. The surviving chickens followed her. Even the carrion hawks lowered their wings when she approached. Elias gave her responsibility for the living stock. A civilization needed more than soldiers. It needed tomorrow's food. Trust was not granted. It was tested. Elias announced that the southern beach held medicine, weapons, and seed crates guarded by Cassian's men. He asked for volunteers to retrieve them through an underground route. Lyra stepped forward. Mara tried to stand despite her injured leg. Sable offered to identify the correct crates. Others joined. Elias selected only those who understood the risk. The tunnel opened beneath the old wreck. Slip led the group through darkness. Pike mapped the route. Vesper remained behind to protect the settlement. The Beast Girls crawled beneath the expedition camp, while Cassian's guards drank above them. They could hear the men boasting. They heard one claim that Cassian would soon sell the island's beastkin population to recover expedition costs. They heard another joke about choosing the prettiest prisoners first. Lyra's claws cut into the earth. Elias touched her shoulder. Not yet. She hated the order. She obeyed. That mattered more. They opened the buried floor of the storage tent without making a sound. Sable identified sealed grain, fever medicine, farming tools, rope, salt, needles, lamp oil, and sacks of hardy root seeds. They took what the settlement required. They left the ceremonial weapons. They left the silver. They left the alcohol. Superficial treasure remained for Cassian. Real value vanished beneath his feet. Before leaving, Elias opened a crate of preserved meat and placed a dead red insect inside. The insect carried the same curse residue as the command ruins. When Cassian's guards ate the meat, the curse would mark them as secondary overseers. They would share a portion of their master's burden. Greed spread consequences efficiently. The living team returned before dawn. No one was lost. No one betrayed the route. No one hid supplies. They had proven useful. Elias gave them access to the lower sanctuary. The transformation accelerated. Bones harvested from ancient non-human remains became walls around the spring. The dead mason shaped them into smooth interlocking plates harder than timber. Roots from the jungle were redirected into gardens. Channels carried clean water to bathing pools and kitchens. The ogre moved stone. Brian constructed docks along a sheltered cove. The Winged Scout mapped the coastline from above. Pike and Slip marked safe hunting paths. Vesper drove living prowlers away from the settlement and killed those that refused to retreat. Their corpses became scouts. Orin converted removed collars into defensive warts. The iron that once trapped beastkin now formed a ring around the domain. Any slaver mark crossing the boundary would ignite. Any command curse would be absorbed. Any hostile soul magic would alert Elias instantly. The dead priest turned a chamber beneath the mountain into a quiet hall for freed spirits. The engineers restored an ancient mill powered by flowing death energy. It ground grain, sharpened tools, lifted water, powered furnaces, what the outside world feared as corruption became industry. Elias named the settlement Hollow Haven. The Beast Girls disliked the word hollow. Mara understood it first. A hollow can be empty. Elias watched undead workers raise the central hall. Or it can be made ready. The domain formed when he drove the gray bone shard into the ground beneath the spring. Darkness spread through the soil. It did not kill the grass. It outlined every root, every insect, every corpse, every footprint. Elias felt the entire territory at once. The walls, the tunnels, the coast, the hidden gardens, the living heart sleeping beneath shelter roofs, the undead patrolling beyond them. Within the boundary, Death energy flowed toward him like rivers toward the sea. Damaged undead repaired faster. Stored corpses stopped decaying. Hostile creatures weakened after crossing the outer markers. Any body that died inside the territory became visible to his authority. The domain was not a spell he cast. It was a kingdom recognizing its ruler. Darius stood at the center and drove his sword into the ground. The white fire within him spread through the boundary. Every undead bowed. The hierarchy became absolute. Darius commanded the military. Vesper ruled the beasts. Slip commanded hunters and infiltrators. Brine directed labor and defense. Orin controlled craft and curse work. The priest guided souls. Beneath them served named specialists, then skilled undead, then common workers and soldiers. No confusion. No competing commands. The army had become an institution. The living saw only a portion of it. Most remained inside the shadow realm. Elias still hid his true strength. He had learned patience from betrayal. He would not forget it because he had gained power. The lower city contained resources beyond anything Cassian imagined. Vaults of grave iron. Libraries sealed in bone. Forges that burned without fuel. Fields of pale mushrooms growing from harmless death energy. Reservoirs of preserved water. Dormitories carved for thousands. Weapons waiting to be repaired. And beneath Darius's old fortress, Orin discovered a chamber containing a sealed corpse. The woman inside wore white armor split by a black spear. Golden wings had been nailed to the floor around her. A dead saint. Not a symbol, not a statue. A genuine celestial warrior whose flesh had resisted decay for centuries. Darius recognized her. Seraphine. She had descended during the fall of the buried city, not to save it, to destroy the Titan before it could awaken. The failed sovereign betrayed her and used her blood in his binding ritual. Her corpse still contained divine power. Elias did not raise her. Not yet. The spear pinning her body was drinking the last of her soul. Removing it carelessly could destroy both. Instead, he ordered the chamber sealed and placed Darius outside it. A legendary corpse was not merely a weapon. It was a future crisis. He would prepare before touching it. Above ground, Hollow Haven produced its first harvest of red root shoots. Nia carried the basket through the settlement while chickens followed behind her. Children received the first portions. Mara walked again using a brace made by Orin. Lyra returned from patrol wearing no collar and carrying a bow crafted from prowler bone. Sable completed the first full inventory. They possessed enough grain for months if rationed carefully. Enough seed for several fields. Enough medicine to survive an outbreak. Enough tools to build permanent homes. Enough hidden weapons to arm every adult. Enough undead labor to complete work that would have required years. The outside expedition had silver. Hollow Haven had survival. Cassian did not understand the difference. He returned to the mainland as a hero. Messengers carried his story ahead of him. The Vale family praised his conquest. The guild promoted him. The council granted him provisional ownership of the island. Mira stood beside him during every public celebration. The cracked iron seal hung from his neck. He told the crowd it was proof that the ancient ruins had chosen him. No one saw the black veins spreading across his chest. No one noticed that he no longer slept. No one heard the whispers inside the seal telling him that everyone nearby was property. He began issuing commands without realizing it. Servants stood motionless until dismissed. Guards fought over who had obeyed him first. Mira woke with bruises around her throat after Cassian dreamed of tightening a collar. The guild officer developed a red mark around his neck. The hunters who ate the preserved meat began hearing the underground bell across the sea. Triumph became unease. Unease became secrecy. Cassian covered every symptom with another celebration. Back on the island, Elias stood on the new wall as rain struck the bone battlements. The domain pulsed beneath his feet. Something had entered the outer jungle. Then another presence followed. Then hundreds. The winged scout returned with half her body torn away. She crashed before Darius and delivered her final images through the shadow link. A black tide moved along the eastern coast. Horned beasts, plague apes, armored reptiles, flying predators, creatures from regions that had never hunted together. They were not migrating. They were fleeing. Behind them, trees fell in a straight line. The sea withdrew from the eastern shore. A red gate rose from the exposed seabed. Its surface beat like a heart. The Titan beneath the island stirred. Every ward around Hollow Haven ignited. Elias felt corpses awakening beyond the domain. Thousands of them. Darius drew his sword. Vesper climbed onto the wall. Lyra sounded the alarm. The living ran to their assigned positions while the dead rose from shadow and silent ranks. Elias watched the enormous wave of monsters racing toward human civilization. Then the Red Gate opened. The Red Gate did not release an army. It released hunger. A wind colder than the deepest grave exploded across the eastern shore. Trees turned gray. Birds dropped from the sky. The black tide of fleeing monsters screamed as their shadows stretched toward the gate and tore free from their bodies. The stolen shadows crawled across the exposed seabed. They merged. Claws formed first, then horns. Then hundreds of mouths opened inside a single towering silhouette. Elias watched through the eyes of his undead scout as the creature pulled itself halfway through the gate. It had no skin, no stable shape, only layers of compressed souls wrapped around a skeleton too large to fit through the opening. The titan beneath the island groaned. The sound rolled through Hollow Haven. Children woke crying. The chickens scattered. Pale cracks appeared across the bone walls. Darius stood beside Elias with his sword drawn. That is not the enemy. Elias watched smaller shapes pour around the giant. Humanoid corpses wearing melted armor. Winged heads without bodies. Black hounds dragging chains from their mouths. Darius continued. It is the hand clearing the road. For what? The one who built the gate. Elias felt the mark on his wrist tighten. The titan knew the answer. It refused to share it. Not from fear, from shame. Elias looked toward the eastern horizon. The monster wave would reach Hollow Haven before nightfall. Behind it came the dead from the gate. Beyond the sea waited Cassian and the mainland, celebrating a victory that had awakened something ancient. Elias issued a single command. Open the lower city. The living council stared at him. Mara understood first. You said the underground was forbidden. It was unfinished. And now? Elias watched the approaching black tide. Now it is necessary. The settlement moved. No panic. No screaming crowds crushing one another. Every person had an assigned route. Every child had an escort. Food stores descended first. Medicine followed. Seeds, tools, records, living animals. Oren's undead craftsman dismantled the collar removal frame and carried it below. Brine's laborers opened the sealed stairways. Darius deployed bone soldiers along the walls. Lyra gathered the scouts. Sable locked the inventory hall and handed Elias the final report. We can survive underground for several months. Longer. You found more food? I found bodies that do not eat. Sable looked toward the undead ranks filling the roads. That was almost a joke. No, she sighed. That makes it worse. Elias sent Vesper east with Slip and every prowler under their command. They were not ordered to fight. They were ordered to guide the fleeing monsters. A stampede was not merely danger. It was force without direction. Elias intended to give it one. Undead prowlers appeared along the black tide's flanks. They killed the fastest predators, frightened the slower beasts away from Hollow Haven, and cut paths through the jungle toward the southern ruins, toward Cassian's abandoned expedition base, toward the command chamber still saturated with the Overseer's blood. The stampede shifted. Hundreds of monsters turned south. Then thousands followed. Hollow Haven disappeared from their path. Darius looked at Elias. You could have sent them toward the sea. The gate is in the sea. You could have scattered them. They would return. Darius understood. The southern ruins had once enslaved the island. Now they would become bait. Elias left a small undead force visible on Hollow Haven's eastern wall. The living descended into the city. Most of the true army remained hidden inside the Shadow Realm. He refused to expose everything for a wave that had not yet revealed its master. The first monsters arrived near sunset. Armored reptiles crashed through the trees. Bone spikes covered their backs. Their jaws dripped green venom. They saw the figures on the wall and charged. Elias raised one hand. The ground opened. The reptiles fell into trenches lined with grave iron. Oren activated the stolen collar runes. The metal did not control the monsters. It seized the dead souls trapped inside their armor. The reptiles convulsed. Brine's laborers dropped black stone slabs over the pits. The first wave buried itself. Flying predators followed. The dead spear birds intercepted them. Carrion hawks tore through wings. The winged scout, repaired within the Shadow Realm, led them from above. Her broken body had been reinforced with bone plates and prowler tendons. White markings glowed along her feathers. She no longer fell after one strike. She dove through a flock, severed 3 necks, and climbed into the storm. Elias named her Ash. The name stabilized her evolution. Ash screamed. Every undead bird followed. The sky became a grinder of feathers, claws, and blue fire. On the ground, plague apes reached the wall. They were larger than houses. Fungus covered their shoulders. Each breath released yellow spores. Darius stepped forward. No living defenders. Mara had already reached the same conclusion. She ordered the beastkin archers away from the battlements. The spores struck the walls. Undead soldiers inhaled poison that could not harm them. Darius descended alone. The first ape swung both fists. He blocked with his sword. The impact cracked the earth beneath him. He did not move. White fire spread from his armor into the ape's arms. Its flesh aged. Muscle collapsed. Bones dried. Darius turned the blade and severed both wrists. The second ape opened its jaws. Brine climbed onto its back, drove hooks into its neck, and tied a chain around its throat. The dead ogre pulled from the opposite side. The ape fell. Skeletal diggers swarmed it with picks. Every monster that died inside the domain became material. Elias raised none immediately. He marked the useful bodies and stored them. A commander did not recruit during chaos. He collected options. The last plague ape reached the wall carrying something in its chest. A red crystal pulsed between its ribs, the same color as Cassian's seal. Elias killed the creature himself. He stepped beneath its descending hand, drove the gray bone shard into its wrist, and let death energy rot the joint from within. The arm collapsed. Elias climbed it. The ape tried to bite him. Darius threw his sword. The blade pinned its jaw to its shoulder. Elias reached the chest and tore out the crystal. The ape died. The crystal did not. It beat in his hand. Through it, Elias saw the mainland. Cassian stood before an enormous crowd in the capital square. Golden banners hung from every tower. Guild officials presented him with a ceremonial crown. Mira wore a white dress beside him. Priests praised the man who had conquered the Forbidden Island. Merchants sold small iron replicas of the Overseer's seal. Children carried painted wooden swords and pretended to be Cassian hunting monsters. At the edge of the square, a herald unrolled a proclamation. Elias Crow had been declared responsible for the expedition disaster. Cassian had accused him of sabotaging the first ship. Mira testified that Elias had become obsessed with forbidden death magic. The surviving hunters claimed he had attacked them on the island. The 2 guards killed near the coast were named as his victims. The beastkin slaves were described as hostages under his control. The guild issued a bounty. The church called him a grave heretic. The Vale family demanded authority to return to the island and rescue the prisoners. The crowd shouted for Elias's execution. He watched without anger. Public opinion was another kind of weather. Only fools argued with storms. Wise men built roofs. Cassian raised the iron seal. The crowd cheered. Black veins covered most of his arm now. He wore a golden sleeve to hide them. The guild officer beside him had a red ring around his throat. The hunters from the island trembled whenever Cassian spoke. Mira smiled for the crowd, while one hand remained pressed against her neck. They all knew something was wrong. None dared stop the ceremony. Fame had become a cage. Cassian could not admit that the artifact was killing him without admitting his glorious conquest had been a mistake. So he climbed higher. He claimed the seal allowed him to control the island's ancient defenses. He promised to establish a new colony. He promised land to nobles. He promised rare monster materials to guilds. He promised beastkin labor to merchants. Every promise tied another powerful person to the lie. Elias released the red crystal. The vision remained. A voice whispered through it. Property resists. Overseer suffers. Complete the crown. Cassian heard the same words. His face twitched. Mira leaned toward him. You should stop. The crowd could not hear her. Cassian could. His smile sharpened. Not now. The mark reached your chest. Not now. The priests can examine it. And tell everyone I am cursed? Mira lowered her eyes. Cassian gripped the seal. Blood ran from beneath his golden sleeve. The relic drank it. The sky above the capital darkened. Clouds rotated around the ceremonial square. The priests looked upward. The crowd quieted. Cassian mistook the silence for awe. He lifted the seal higher. Behold the authority that chose me. The replica seals sold by the merchants ignited. Thousands of small iron charms burned red against coats, belts, and children's hands. People screamed. The guild officer fell to his knees. A collar of light closed around his throat. The surviving hunters clawed at identical rings. Mira tried to run. A red chain wrapped around her waist and dragged her back toward Cassian. He stared at the seal. "What did you do?" The relic answered by splitting open. Something black pushed from within. Not a creature. A crown. Thin spikes unfolded like the legs of a dead insect. They pierced Cassian's palm, climbed his arm, and wrapped around his skull. He screamed. The crowd fled. Every replica seal pulled its owner toward the square. People collided. Children disappeared beneath boots. Carriages overturned. Guild guards attacked civilians to clear paths for nobles. Priests abandoned the wounded. Merchants locked their wagons and drove through the crowd. The heroes who had praised Cassian minutes earlier became animals fighting for space. Elias watched through the crystal. Triumph had ended. Suspicion lasted only a breath. Panic arrived screaming. The punishment crown fused with Cassian's skull. He tore at it. The spikes burrowed deeper. "Get it off." Mira summoned holy light. The crown swallowed it. Her spell darkened. Black fire spread across her hands. The curse used her healing magic to complete itself. Cassian's body rose above the square. Red chains erupted from his chest and struck the ground in every direction. The capital trembled. Doors appeared in the streets. Small at first, then larger. Red stone arches pushed through homes, markets, temples, and guild halls. Each gate opened into darkness. The smell of graves flooded the city. The first corpse plague victims crawled out on broken limbs. Then came horned executioners dragging axes. Then blind beasts stitched from human torsos. Then swarms of black insects carrying faces inside their wings. The celebration became a massacre. Cassian hung above it all. The crown forced his mouth open. A voice used him. "The overseer has prepared the harvest." Across the sea, the eastern gate on the island expanded. The giant silhouette pushed one shoulder through. The titan beneath Hollow Haven convulsed. Black blood burst from cracks in the mountain. Elias crushed the red crystal. The connection ended. Darius removed his sword from the dead plague ape. The gate has anchored to the mainland. Yes. The island was only the key. Yes. Did you know? Elias looked toward the south, where the redirected monster wave had reached the slaver ruins. "I knew the stolen seal required a bearer. You allowed him to become one." He insisted. Darius's white flame narrowed. "Many living people will die. Many were already going to die. That is not an answer." Elias turned toward him. "I could have killed Cassian on the beach. The seal would have chosen another greedy hand. I could have hidden it. The curse would have continued calling through the collars. I could have destroyed the fragment. The missing crown would have searched for it." He looked toward the sea. "Now the gate has a visible anchor, and you intend to cut it when the enemy finishes entering." Darius became silent. A lesser commander might have mistaken patience for cruelty. Darius had watched a sovereign sacrifice a city by acting too soon. He understood the cost of incomplete victories. Messages arrived from the undead scouts. The southern ruins had collapsed beneath the monster wave. The command chamber was buried. The old slaver weapons had killed hundreds of beasts before failing. Their corpses now covered the area, a battlefield prepared in advance. Elias ordered the bones collected. He sent Orin to recover every intact curse engine. He sent Brine to build fortified roads from Hollow Haven to the coast. He sent Sable to mark land for larger farms. Mara stared at him. "The mainland is being destroyed." "Yes." "And you are planting fields." "Yes." "Why?" "Because survivors will come." The island had been declared his prison. Soon it would become the safest territory in the region. Ships would flee the mainland. Guilds would beg for harbor. Nobles would offer treasure. Hungry cities would trade anything for grain. Elias had no intention of rescuing everyone for free. Compassion without preparation only created more corpses. He expanded Hollow Haven's docks. He fortified the northern cove. He placed undead sea creatures beneath the reef. He claimed the abandoned western lighthouse. He stationed Ash and her flock above the shipping lanes. He converted the southern ruins into a killing ground. The monster corpses became walls. The plague ape bones became towers. The armored reptiles became gate guardians after Orin removed the red crystals from their chests. Vesper hunted the remaining living predators and forced entire packs away from the settlement. Slip entered the red gate's shadow and returned with memories stolen from a decapitated invader. The gate did not lead to one world. It passed through a dead kingdom between worlds, a vast place ruled by something called the Keeper of Chains. The punishment crown was one of its keys. The Overseer's seal was another. The colossal corpse beneath the island was the final lock. Cassian had opened the road, but Elias stood on the lock. That was why the Titan had marked him. That was why the gate had appeared near his territory. The Keeper was not invading blindly. It was coming for the corpse beneath Hollow Haven. Night fell. The island's eastern sky turned red. The gate expanded until its upper arch vanished into the clouds. The hand-shaped horror dragged itself onto the shore and bowed toward the opening. Every lesser invader followed. Even the fleeing monsters stopped. Their bodies flattened against the ground. A foot emerged from the gate. It wore armor made from chained skulls. The sea boiled around it. A second foot followed. Then a figure stepped onto the island. Tall, thin, wrapped in a black robe stitched from royal banners. A crown of iron hands circled its head. Thousands of chains extended from its back into the gate. Each chain carried a screaming soul. The Keeper of Chains had arrived. Darius raised his sword. Seraphine's sealed corpse opened its golden eyes beneath the city. Orin's wards shattered one after another. The Titan's heartbeat became a roar. The Keeper looked past the monster army, past the walls, past the hidden tunnels. Its gaze found Elias immediately. The iron hands around its crown turned toward him. Then the ancient boss smiled. Elias Crow. Its voice crossed the entire island. I have been waiting for you to die again. Elias did not answer the Keeper. The creature had spoken his name like an old secret. More dangerous than the gates. More dangerous than Cassian. More dangerous than the army kneeling along the eastern coast. Darius stepped in front of him. The ancient commander's white fire shook for the first time. You have met it before. No. It said you died again. I heard. Below Hollow Haven. Seraphine's corpse struck the inside of her sealed chamber. Golden light split the stone. Orin's remaining wards shattered. The dead saint was not awakening because of Elias. She was reacting to the Keeper. The black spear pinning her body bent toward the east as though recognizing its master. Elias understood. The Keeper had placed it there. It had been part of the first invasion. Perhaps the First Lord of Death had not failed alone. Perhaps someone had prepared his failure. The Keeper lifted one skeletal hand. Every chain connected to its back snapped tight. The souls hanging from them screamed. A wave of black pressure rolled across the island. Living monsters collapsed. Undead soldiers dropped to one knee. Bone walls cracked. The edge of Hollow Haven's domain folded inward like paper placed near flame. The Keeper smiled. Kneel. Darius drove his sword into the ground. White fire spread across the wall. Brine planted both feet. Vesper's claws sank into stone. Slip flattened against the battlements, but did not bow. Inside the lower city, the beastkin felt the command even through layers of bone. Mara fell against a pillar. Sable clutched her throat. Children screamed as invisible weight pressed them toward the floor. Lyra alone forced herself upright. Her legs trembled. Her ears bled. She reached the alarm bell and struck it. The sound was weak. Then she struck it again. More hands joined her. Workers. Hunters. Former slaves. Every person who had once been forced to kneel pushed against the command. The bell rang through the buried city. The dead Titan heard it. Its heartbeat answered. The Keeper's smile vanished. Elias raised his wrist. The Titan's boundary mark burned black. The pressure over Hollow Haven broke. Air crashed back into living lungs. Undead soldiers rose. Darius pulled his sword from the stone. The Keeper stared toward the mountain. So the corpse chose another parasite. Elias stepped onto the highest battlement. No. His voice crossed the domain through every soul channel Orin had built. We negotiated. The Keeper's iron crown turned. Each hand around its head formed a different gesture of contempt. You think that makes you different? I know it makes you angry. The Keeper moved. It crossed the distance between the eastern shore and Hollow Haven in a single step. The island split beneath its foot. Darius met it outside the wall. Bone sword struck chained staff. White fire collided with red darkness. The shockwave flattened the jungle. Darius flew backward through 3 towers. The Keeper continued walking. Vesper attacked from the side. Her body softened around the chains, swinging toward her. She flowed between them, reformed above the Keeper's shoulder, and sank violet claws into its crown. The iron hands closed around her. Slip appeared beneath its robe and tore at the exposed ankle. Ash and the undead flock descended from the clouds. Brine led the plague apes through the broken gate. Every force Elias had revealed so far attacked at once. The Keeper did not stop. Chains erupted from the ground. They pierced undead birds, crushed prowlers, wrapped plague apes from throat to ankle. The keeper lifted one finger. Every bound corpse turned red. Elias felt foreign authority forcing its way into his connections. The keeper did not destroy undead. It enslaved them. Brine's blue eyes became crimson. Ash wheeled toward Hollow Haven. The plague apes roared and attacked the bone walls. Vesper's violet fire flickered. Only Darius resisted. His old loyalty had survived one sovereign. It refused another. Elias opened the Shadow Realm. He did not pull the corrupted undead back. He pushed death energy outward. Too much. The keeper laughed. You feed what I control. Correct. The red flames inside Brine and Ash swelled. The keeper's chains brightened. Its authority expanded to contain the sudden power. Then Elias cut the supply. The chains recoiled. Every corrupted undead went still. Foreign control demanded continuous force. Elias had forced the keeper to overextend. Darius saw the opening. He drove his sword through the creature's chest. White fire erupted from its back. Vesper tore free from the iron hands and crushed part of the crown between her jaws. Slip entered the wound in the keeper's chest. For one moment, the ancient boss staggered. Elias closed his fist. Return. Blue fire exploded inside every captured undead. Brine ripped the chain from his throat. Ash reversed in midair and drove her spear through a screaming soulbound to the keeper's back. The plague apes seized the chains around their bodies and pulled. The keeper's own weapons became ropes holding it in place. Darius twisted his sword. The black robe split. There was no body underneath. Only a cage. Inside stood the souls of kings, saints, monsters, and dead children compressed around a small human skeleton. The skeleton wore a familiar medallion. Elias recognized it from the memories of the buried city. The first Lord of Death. The failed sovereign had not died. Not completely. The keeper had taken him. Darius froze. The human skeleton lifted its head. Commander. The word came in the sovereign's true voice. Darius's sword trembled. The keeper used the hesitation. Chains burst through Darius's armor. They wrapped his arms, his throat, his sword. The failed sovereign's skull turned toward him. You betrayed me. Darius stopped resisting. White fire weakened. The keeper pulled him closer. You condemned the city. Darius lowered his head. I did. You murdered your king. Yes. You deserve the chain. Darius's hand opened. His sword fell. The keeper laughed. Elias walked through the broken gate. No army surrounded him. No shield covered him. The keeper turned. You hide behind useful corpses, yet you do not understand guilt. Elias passed the fallen plague apes. No. He stopped beside Darius's sword. I understand leverage. He picked it up. Darius looked at him. Elias did not offer comfort. He did not deny the commander's crimes. He did not tell him that the past no longer mattered. Did you kill him? Yes. Was it necessary? Darius looked at the souls imprisoned inside the keeper. He remembered the final ritual. He remembered his king ordering children thrown into the death river. Yes. Would you do it again? White fire returned to the commander's eyes. Yes. Then stop begging a corpse for forgiveness. Darius roared. The chains around him shattered. He seized the keeper with both hands and dragged the ancient creature down. Elias drove the commander's sword through the human skeleton inside its chest. The first Lord of Death screamed. Memories flooded outward. A hidden pact. A promise of immortality. The sovereign had invited the keeper into the city. He had believed he could use the invader's chains to control the Titan. When the ritual failed, he blamed Darius. When Darius struck him down, the keeper took what remained and wore him as a key. The hidden truth burned through every nearby undead. Darius saw it. The Titans saw it. Seraphine saw it. The dead saint's chamber exploded. Golden light pierced the mountain. Seraphine rose from centuries of imprisonment. The black spear remained through her chest. Her wings were still nailed open. Yet she climbed. Stone broke around her. Each movement tore divine flesh. She emerged above Hollow Haven like a wounded sun. The living stared from the lower city. The keeper released Darius. All iron hands around its crown turned towards Seraphine. Return to your chain. The spear through her body pulled. Seraphine screamed. She flew toward the keeper against her will. Elias reached into the shadow realm and opened every road. Orin stood inside the darkness beside thousands of unfinished runes. The dead artificer raised his burned hands. He had studied the spear since the first day. He knew its channels now. its locks, its command language. Elias gave him authority. Aaron spoke through every piece of grave iron across the island. Reject ownership. The collars reforged into Hollow Haven's walls ignited. The curse iron remembered its purpose, then betrayed it. The command inside Seraphine's spear reversed. Instead of dragging her toward the Keeper, it pulled the Keeper toward her. The ancient boss slid across the shattered earth. For the first time, fear entered its voice. Seraphine gripped the spear with both hands. Golden blood covered her fingers. She ripped it from her chest. Her soul began collapsing immediately. Elias stepped into the path of the falling light. Do you want rest? She looked at him. Her eyes contained centuries of rage. No. Do you want service? No. What do you want? Seraphine turned toward the Keeper. Judgment. Elias extended his hand. Then earn it. She accepted. Death energy wrapped around divine light. The two forces should have destroyed each other. Instead, the Titan's mark stabilized them. Seraphine's golden wings burned black at the edges. Her white armor became the color of moonlit bone. The wounds in her body closed around lines of blue fire. She did not kneel. Elias had not asked her to. A contract formed between equals with different purposes. Seraphine raised the black spear. The Keeper tried to retreat. Darius caught its chains. Vesper locked her jaws around its arm. Slip climbed through its rib cage and tore at the trapped souls. Ash severed the chains connecting it to the red gate. Brian ordered the plague apes to pull in the opposite direction. The Keeper remained suspended. Seraphine drove the spear through its crown. Golden black fire swallowed the iron hands. The ancient boss screamed across the island. The red gate shook, but it did not close. Instead, every gate on the mainland opened wider. The Keeper laughed through burning teeth. You kill this vessel while the harvest has already begun. Elias looked through the broken soul channels. He saw the capital. Cassian still hung above the ceremonial square. The punishment crown had fused into his skull. Red chains dragged corpses toward him. Each body became another gate soldier. The city defenses had collapsed. Guild hunters abandoned civilians. Nobles sealed themselves inside towers. Priests demanded payment before healing the wounded. Food stores burned. Water channels filled with blood. The crowd that had called Elias a monster now screamed for anyone to save them. Mira knelt beneath Cassian. Her holy robes were black. She begged him to release her. Cassian could barely speak. The crown moved his body, but his eyes remained his own. He watched everything. He understood. The seal had never chosen him. It had consumed him. The treasure had been poison. The fame had been bait. The ceremony had been the final ritual. Triumph had become suspicion. Suspicion had become panic. Panic had become denial. Now denial was dying. The capital's final defense stood at the western gate. Several thousand civilians crowded behind a broken line of soldiers. A horn executioner raised its axe. The commander shouted for the formation to hold. Half the soldiers ran. The others died. The axe fell. A black shadow covered the battlefield. The executioner stopped. Its weapon struck something above the civilians. A skeletal hand. Enormous. It rose from the street and caught the blade. Then the ground turned dark. Death spread across the capital square. Every corpse within the city opened blue eyes. Soldiers. Civilians. Gate beasts. Slaughtered hunters. Dead priests. Even the monsters killed during the invasion. All rose. The crowd went silent. Cassian looked toward the sky. The punishment crown trembled. A road of darkness opened above the city. Darius stepped through first. His armor was cracked. White fire still burned. Vesper followed, larger than before. Her crown of bone now wrapped in broken chains. Slip emerged across the rooftops with an entire pack of undead prowlers. Ash and her flock covered the clouds. Brine marched through the gate beside the plague apes. Orin appeared on a moving fortress built from interlocked bones. Behind them came rows of undead soldiers. Then more, and more. The streets could not contain them. The city walls disappeared beneath their feet. Every monster that had terrorized the capital recoiled. The crowd did not cheer. They could not breathe. The army they had been taught to fear stood between them and extinction. The army they had called heresy moved with perfect order. No looting. No panic. No wasted motion. A dead dragon rose from the shadow road. It had once been stored beneath the buried city, incomplete and shattered. Orin had rebuilt its skeleton. The Titan's death energy had restored its wings. Seraphine's divine fire burned in its chest. Its skull emerged above the towers. Black flame rolled between its teeth. Elias stood on its head. His coat moved in the grave wind. No crown rested on him. No golden armor. No heroic banner. He looked exactly like the wounded man Cassian had kicked from the wreck. Only now a civilization marched behind him. Lyra stood near the dragon's horns with her bone bow. Mara commanded evacuation routes from the fortress. Sable directed undead carriers toward food stores and medical shelters. Nia rode beside Vesper, guiding living animals away from the burning districts. The beast girls Cassian had called property were issuing commands to monsters that made guild masters tremble. Elias raised one hand. The dead across the capital froze. The invading army froze with them. Every gate beast looked toward him. Kill your masters. The resurrected monsters turned. They attacked the red gates. Horned executioners buried axes in their own commanders. Corpse hounds tore apart chained priests. Winged heads flooded back through the openings. The ancient army began massacring itself. One command changed the battlefield. The surviving humans watched in stunned silence. Some recognized Elias. The guild officer crawled from beneath a ruined platform. His throat still carried the red collar mark. That is impossible. A merchant dropped the iron replica he had sold to children. A priest covered his face. Mira looked up at the dragon. Her lips parted. Elias? Cassian saw him too. Tears filled his eyes. Not regret. Not yet. Pure terror. The punishment crown forced his body upright, but his knees shook in the air. The crowd remembered the proclamations, the accusations, the bounty. They remembered laughing at the weak researcher. They remembered cheering when Cassian promised to conquer the island. Now Hollowhaven's banner rose above the undead fortress. A simple mark, an open grave beneath a growing tree. The truth struck them all at once. Elias had not enslaved starving beastkin. He had fed them, freed them, armed them, built a city with them. The monsters were not his masters. They were his workforce. The dead dragon was not attacking him. It carried him. The legion was not surrounding him. It was kneeling. The sound began at the city gate. Armor struck stone. Then every undead soldier lowered itself. Plague apes bowed. Prowlers flattened. Birds folded their wings. The dead dragon lowered its skull above the square. Darius knelt. Brine knelt. Orin knelt. Even Seraphine descended and planted her spear before Elias. The army that terrified the world acknowledged one ruler. Cassian's bladder released. The crowd smelled it. Mira looked away. The guild officer collapsed. Several nobles fell to their knees before anyone commanded them. Cassian's mouth finally moved without the crown's voice. Please. Elias stepped from the dragon's skull onto the air. A bridge of skeletal hands formed beneath his boots. He descended toward the square. The crowd parted. People pressed themselves against ruined walls. No one dared touch him. Cassian's red chains loosened. The crown could feel its vessel weakening. Mira crawled forward. Elias, we can explain. He passed her. The guild officer raised both hands. We were deceived. Elias passed him. The surviving expedition hunters dropped their weapons. One began crying. Another begged. Cassian's chains released him. He fell from the air. His knees struck the stones. The punishment crown remained fused to his skull. He reached toward Elias. Elias walked past without looking down. Behind him, the entire undead legion rose. The public humiliation was complete, but the battle was not. The red gates shook. The dying keeper's voice rolled through every opening. You have shown them your throne. Elias stopped. The largest gate split apart. Something on the other side opened its eyes. Now let them watch it break. The thing beyond the gate did not step through. It reached through every corpse first. The capital shook as red light flooded the streets. Dead invaders convulsed beneath Elias's control. Blue fire flickered inside their eyes, fighting something darker. The keeper's dying vessel split apart outside Hollowhaven. Its chains snapped across the island. Its imprisoned souls screamed into the red gates. Then the ancient boss abandoned the body Seraphine had pierced. The empty robe collapsed. The iron crown melted. The human skeleton of the first Lord of Death fell at Darius's feet, but the presence behind it survived. It spread through the gates like poison through veins. Every opening in the capital became an eye. Every dead monster became a mouth. Elias Crow. The voice came from thousands of throats. You still do not remember me. Elias stood in the ruined square while the crowd retreated behind his undead lines. He felt something moving inside his oldest wound. Not the stab wound Cassian had given him. Something deeper. A scar hidden beneath memory. A cold room. Chains around his wrists. A voice promising that death was not an ending. A blade descending toward his chest. The vision vanished. Elias's expression did not change. The enemy wanted surprise. He gave it silence. Darius approached the fallen skeleton. The commander lifted the medallion from its neck. The symbol showed a crowned skull surrounded by open hands. This belonged to the sovereign before he betrayed the city. Elias recognized the design. Not from the island, from somewhere before. A childhood nightmare. A locked cellar beneath the Crow family estate. His father burning old documents. His mother whispering that certain bloodlines were better forgotten. The keeper laughed through the gates. At last, the red light intensified. You were not chosen on the island. You were prepared long before it. Cassian remained on his knees nearby. The punishment crown pulsed against his skull. His eyes moved between Elias and the gates. He wanted to crawl away. The crown would not let him. Mira gripped the broken edge of the ceremonial platform. What is it talking about? Elias ignored her. The largest gate widened. A cathedral of chains became visible on the other side. Countless pillars rose into darkness. Each pillar held a body. Kings, beasts, children, saints, hunters from worlds Elias had never seen. At the center stood a throne built from sealed coffins. Something sat upon it. Not the keeper's vessel, the source. A figure without a face. Its body was wrapped in burial cloth marked with thousands of names. One name burned brighter than the others. Elias Crow. The memory returned. Elias had died before Cassian betrayed him. Years earlier, he had been a child. The Crow family had served as hidden wardens of death gates. Their blood carried a dormant authority capable of resisting soul chains. When Elias was young, his father tried to awaken that bloodline. The ritual failed, or appeared to. Elias's heart stopped. For several minutes, he died. During that death, the keeper found him. It offered him a throne. It promised endless armies. It promised power over everyone who had ever harmed him. The child refused. So the keeper marked his soul and sent him back. It had waited ever since. Not for Elias to awaken. For him to become desperate enough to accept Cassian's betrayal. The shipwreck. The starving beastkin. The buried city. The punishment crown. None had been random. The keeper had pushed each event toward the island. It had arranged a kingdom of corpses around Elias like bait around a trap. It expected him to become another sovereign desperate to control everything. It expected him to take the crown of slaves. When he rejected it, the plan changed. Now the keeper wanted his body. The faceless figure rose from the coffin throne. Every gate screamed. The punishment crown forced Cassian to stand. Red chains lifted him into the air. His body began tearing open along the black veins. Mira screamed his name. Cassian looked down at her. For the first time, his arrogance had vanished completely. Help me. She reached for him. The crown released one chain. It wrapped around her wrist. Cassian saw the opening. He grabbed Mira and pulled her toward him. Take her instead. The crowd heard him. Mira froze. Cassian tightened his grip. She has holy power. She completed the ritual. She is more valuable. Mira's face collapsed. Years of loyalty, public devotion, shared crimes. He traded all of it in one breath. The keeper laughed. Cassian began bargaining faster. The guild officer knew about the sabotage. The officer recoiled. The guards helped steal the compass. Several surviving hunters turned on one another. Mira lied during the hearing. She planned to sell the beastkin. The Vale family funded everything. Each accusation produced another chain. The traitors tried to save themselves by feeding one another to the curse. The square erupted. Guild hunters attacked former allies. Nobles pushed servants toward the gates. Priests accused merchants. Merchants exposed officials. The false heroes collapsed into exactly what Elias had always known them to be. Hungry animals in expensive clothing. Mara watched from the bone fortress. Should we stop them? No. Elias looked toward the gates. Record every confession. Sable already had undead scribes working. Every word entered bone tablets. Every betrayal became evidence. The people who survived would know who caused the disaster, not through propaganda, through the villain's own mouths. The faceless figure stepped closer to the gate. The dead across the capital screamed. Elias's control weakened. The keeper reached through its mark on his soul. Cold chains appeared around his wrists. Only he could see them. They pulled toward the cathedral. "Come home," the keeper whispered. "You have built enough." Elias looked at Hollow Haven's forces. Darius, Seraphine, Vesper, Slip, Brind, Ash, Orin, the Plague Apes, the Prowler Packs, the Dead Dragon, the Living Beastkin commanding evacuation teams and defense lines. An empire born from discarded people and useful corpses. The keeper believed all of it had prepared Elias for surrender. It did not understand what he had built, not dependence, structure. Elias opened every command connection. Then he released them. The undead legion shuddered. Blue fire dimmed. The crowd gasped. Cassian laughed despite the crown splitting his face. He lost control. The guild officers stumbled upright. Now, kill him before the monster's turn. No undead moved. Darius remained kneeling. Vesper remained beside Nia. Brian kept directing civilians. Ash continued guarding the sky. The dead dragon lowered its head before Elias. The keeper's chains tightened. Why do they not fall? Elias looked through the largest gate. Because they are not yours. You released them. I released control. Darius rose. He lifted his sword. I still choose my king. Seraphine spread her darkened golden wings. I still choose judgment. Orin raised his burned hands. I still choose to break chains. Brian struck his axe against his chest. Slip bared his dead fangs. Vesper roared. The entire legion answered. Not because magic forced them, because purpose had replaced slavery. The sound broke the chains around Elias's wrists. The keeper recoiled. For the first time, the faceless figure stepped backward. Elias lifted one hand. Advance. The undead army entered the gates. Darius crossed first. He led the white-flamed knights into the cathedral. Seraphine followed through the air, tearing chained souls from pillars as she passed. Vesper and Slip hunted along opposite walls. Brian marched with siege corpses carrying bone hooks and grave iron cutters. Orin rode the moving fortress, rewriting curse runes faster than the cathedral could restore them. Ash and her flock filled the darkness above. The dead dragon forced its skull through the largest opening and ripped the gate wide enough for the full legion. The capital watched the impossible. The army of death left the living city behind and invaded hell. Elias stepped through last. The cathedral attacked him immediately. Names burned across the burial cloth. Chains made from his forgotten memories struck from every direction. He blocked none. He let them enter his mind. His father's fear. His mother's silence. The childhood ritual. Cassian's dagger. Mira's betrayal. The crowd's laughter. Every wound became a hook. The keeper pulled. Elias continued walking. Pain was leverage only when hidden. He had already examined his. Already accepted it. Already used it. The chains found nothing loose enough to seize. Darius reached the first pillar. A chained corpse king opened its eyes and attacked. Its body was larger than the dead dragon's skull. Armor covered every inch. A crown had been nailed into its spine. Darius met the descending blade. The cathedral floor split. White fire scattered. The corpse king drove him back. Seraphine struck from above. The giant caught her spear. Vesper climbed its arm. Slip entered the gaps in its armor. Brian wrapped chains around its legs. The corpse king roared and released a storm of enslaved souls. They tore through undead ranks. Elias saw the crown in its spine. The creature could not be commanded while the crown remained. He did not attempt it. Break the throne beneath it. Orin understood. The moving fortress changed direction. Skeletal engineers fired grave iron anchors into the cathedral floor. Plague apes pulled. Bone roads cracked. The pillar behind the corpse king collapsed. Its chains loosened. Darius drove his sword through the crown. Seraphine split it with the black spear. Vesper tore the remaining iron from the giant's spine. The corpse king stopped. Its blue eyes had not ignited. No fire appeared. It looked at Elias with empty sockets. The keeper shouted, "Kneel." The giant turned toward the coffin throne. Then it broke its own chains. The sound shook the cathedral. It lowered one fist to the floor before Elias. Not enslaved. Convinced. Elias named it Atlas. The corpse king rose as the legion's siege monarch. The hierarchy shifted. Brian bowed to Atlas in matters of raw force. Darius remained supreme commander. Atlas seized the nearest pillar and used it as a weapon. One swing destroyed an entire chain formation. The legion surged forward. Every elite dominated a section of the battlefield. Ash evolved first. She flew through a storm of screaming soul blades. Her repaired wings were torn apart. Instead of falling, she absorbed the shadows of the dead birds around her. New wings formed, longer, sharper, made from black feathers edged in white fire. Her eyes became silver. She became the grave sky matriarch. One cry shattered every flying chain beast above the cathedral. Slip evolved next. He entered the keeper's shadow and found thousands of predators trapped within it. Rather than consuming them, he released them. Their hunting instincts merged around him. His translucent flesh became pure darkness. His 6 legs divided into 12 shadow limbs. He became the Hollow Stalker. No wall could stop him. No shadow could hide from him. Vesper reached the coffin throne. The iron hands attacked her from every side. She allowed them to pierce her. Then she softened her body and trapped them inside. Violet fire spread through every hand. Her bone crown expanded. Broken chains wrapped around her shoulders like royal fur. She became the Grave Prowler Empress. She crushed the iron hands against the throne. Darius fought the failed sovereign's remaining memories. Each appeared as a spectral version of the king he had killed. Each accused him. Each demanded repentance. Darius answered with the same strike. No excuses. No denial. No hesitation. He cut through the final memory and evolved into the Oathbreaker General. His white fire became pale gold. His sword carried the authority to sever false contracts. Seraphine reached the faceless figure. The keeper wrapped her in the same chains that had held her for centuries. She did not resist. She let them close. Then she detonated the divine death energy inside her wings. The chains burned from within. Her broken halo reformed as a ring of black suns. She became the fallen saint of final judgment. The keeper's burial cloth tore. Beneath it was not a body. It was a mass of stolen names. Every victim it had chained. Every ruler it had corrupted. Every child it had marked. Elias found his own name among them. He pulled it free. The cathedral convulsed. The keeper screamed, "You belong to me." Elias crushed the burning name in his hand. No one who owns nothing should speak so confidently. The stolen names began escaping. Seraphine cut them loose. Darius severed their contracts. Orin rewrote the cathedral's runes. The priest guided freed souls toward Hollow Haven shadow roads. The keeper's throne collapsed. Across the capital, every red gate flickered. Cassian fell from the air. The punishment crown cracked. Mira crawled away from him. The guild officer tried to run. Lyra stepped into his path. She placed an arrow against his throat. "Stay." One word. The man obeyed. Not because of magic, because he finally understood who held power. Inside the cathedral, the faceless keeper shrank as names abandoned it. Elias reached the coffin throne. At its center lay the original punishment crown. The stolen seal formed one half. The crown fused to Cassian formed the other. Together they could bind the titan beneath Hollow Haven. Together they could enslave every corpse touched by the island's death energy. The keeper expected Elias to destroy them. He did not. He reclaimed them. The seal tore free from Cassian's palm across the worlds. The punishment crown ripped from his skull. He screamed as both artifacts vanished into the gate. They appeared before Elias. He merged them, not into a crown, into a key. Orin's runes wrapped around it. Seraphine's fire purified it. Darius severed its old contract. The Titan's boundary mark entered the metal. The key became black and silver. A tool. Nothing more. The keeper stared. "You would use my authority?" Elias closed his hand around the key. "No." The cathedral doors slammed shut. "I am repossessing stolen property." He drove the key into the coffin throne. Every chain reversed. The keeper became the prisoner. The faceless mass screamed as its own cathedral wrapped around it. Pillars bent inward. Coffins opened. The souls it had enslaved dragged it down. The throne closed over the last fragment of burial cloth. Silence followed. The keeper of chains was not destroyed. Something that old rarely died cleanly. But it was sealed beneath its own empire. And Elias now held the key. The red gates began collapsing. The legion withdrew in perfect order. Atlas carried the sealed coffin throne across one shoulder. Orin collected fragments of curse metal. The priest guided freed souls into the shadow realm. Seraphine carried the wounded. Darius walked last, ensuring nothing followed. They returned to the capital as dawn broke. The survivors filled the streets. No one cheered. They watched. They understood that praise was no longer enough. Elias descended from the dead dragon. Cassian crawled toward him. Without the punishment crown, The wounds across his skull remained open. Blood covered his face. Mira crawled beside him. The guild officer followed. The surviving hunters dragged themselves from the ruins. The Vale family representatives abandoned their carriages and fell to their knees. Behind them came nobles, priests, merchants, members of the crowd who had demanded Elias's death. They moved toward Hollow Haven's open gate, now shining above the square. They had seen the island through the shadow road. The farms, the clean water, the fortified walls, the food stores, the protected children, the organized living and dead. Everything the mainland had lost existed there. Cassian pressed his forehead to the stones. "Save me." Mira began crying. "We made mistakes." The guild officer raised trembling hands. "For humanity." The Vale patriarch crawled forward. "You are still one of us." Elias looked at the people who had stolen from him, abandoned him, accused him, hunted him, then begged at the gates of the civilization they had once planned to enslave. Behind Elias, Atlas planted the sealed throne beside the dead dragon. Darius stood at his right. Seraphine stood at his left. Vesper lay before Nia. Lyra aimed her bow. Mara opened the record of confessions. Sable carried the inventory of every resource the mainland now lacked. The entire world understood at last. Elias had not arrived during the apocalypse to become a hero. He had prepared before it began. He had built the roads, raised the walls, stored the grain, freed the workers, organized the army, claimed the gate, prepared the throne. The king had not appeared at the end. He had been waiting from the beginning. Elias looked down at the crawling traitors. Open the outer court. The gates of Hollow Haven widened. Hope entered their faces. Then bone chains rose from the ground and formed a judgment circle around them. Elias walked toward his throne. Let them beg where everyone can hear. The outer court filled before noon. Not with citizens, with witnesses. Survivors crowded along the bone terraces of Hollow Haven. Beastkin workers stood beside mainland refugees. Undead scribes waited with sharpened fingers pressed against fresh tablets. Darius guarded the throne. Seraphine watched from above with black suns turning behind her wings. At the center of the court, Cassian knelt inside a ring made from the broken chains of the cathedral. Mira knelt beside him. The guild officer knelt behind them. The surviving expedition hunters, Vale retainers, corrupt priests, merchants, and nobles formed a trembling circle around the people they had once followed. Elias sat on a throne grown from the rib of the dead titan. He held no weapon. He did not need one. Atlas stood behind him like a fortress given flesh. Vesper rested near the throne with Nia between her forelegs. Slip remained invisible except for the silver eyes opening occasionally inside other people's shadows. Mara opened the record. Cassian Vale. Cassian lifted his head. Blood had dried across his ruined scalp. Without the punishment crown, he looked smaller. Ordinary. The same man who had once appeared untouchable now shook whenever an undead moved. Mara read his crimes. Sabotaging the expedition vessel. Stealing the azure compass. Attempting to murder Elias. Abandoning starving beastkin. Claiming ownership of the island. Activating the overseer's seal. Selling false promises to the mainland. Opening the gates. Sacrificing allies when the curse turned against him. Cassian began crying before she finished. It was the crown. Elias watched him. Cassian swallowed. The artifact controlled me. You stabbed me before you touched it. Cassian's mouth opened. No answer came. You threw food into the sea before you touched it. Cassian lowered his eyes. You left children to starve before you touched it. Cassian pressed his forehead to the floor. I was afraid. Elias leaned back. So was the girl chasing the bread. Lyra stood among the witnesses. Her expression did not change. Cassian looked toward her. I did not understand. You understood hunger. Elias's voice remained calm. You found it entertaining. Cassian crawled closer to the throne until the judgment chains pulled tight. Take my family's wealth. Take the Vale estate. Take everything. The estate burned. Cassian froze. The treasury was looted by your retainers. His breathing quickened. The ships were seized by the merchants you betrayed. Cassian turned toward the Vale representatives. His uncle avoided his gaze. His cousin stared at the ground. The family he had invoked possessed nothing left to offer. Cassian looked back at Elias. I can serve you. No, I know the guild secrets. Sable already has them. I know the noble routes. Pike mapped them. I can. Fight. Darius's pale, gold fire narrowed. Cassian saw it and began shaking harder. Elias lifted one hand. Orin approached carrying the merged black and silver key. The artifact Cassian had stolen glowed within it. Cassian recognized the Overseer's seal. His face emptied. No. Orin placed the key against Cassian's chest. Black veins returned instantly. They spread across his body, retracing every path the curse had carved. Cassian screamed. Elias did not look away. You wanted the treasure. The metal sank into Cassian's flesh. You wanted its authority. The punishment crown reformed above his skull. Not as a crown, as a cage. You wanted everyone beneath you. Iron hands closed around Cassian's arms and legs. They lifted him above the court. The old Overseer's seal appeared inside his chest, beating where his heart should have been. Cassian thrashed. Please? The cage rotated. A shadow gate opened beneath him. On the other side waited the sealed cathedral. The keeper's coffin throne stood in darkness, wrapped in countless chains. The imprisoned souls inside it stirred. Cassian saw them. He understood. No. Elias, no. Kill me. Just kill me. You begged for ownership. The chains began pulling him downward. Now you can spend eternity maintaining what you opened. Cassian screamed Elias's name. The gate swallowed him. The key emerged from his back before the shadow closed. The final thing the court heard was Cassian begging the treasure he stole to release him. It did not. Mira collapsed. Her sobs echoed across the silence. I loved you. Elias looked at her. She pressed both hands to her chest. I was confused. Cassian manipulated me. He threatened my family. A woman shouted from among the witnesses. Your family escaped on the first ship. Mira's face twitched. Another survivor raised her voice. You demanded payment before healing my son. A wounded hunter laughed bitterly. You poisoned Elias yourself. Mira looked around. The crowd she once controlled no longer followed her tears. She turned back to Elias. We grew up together. Yes. I stayed beside you when no one else did. You stayed until Cassian offered you a title. Her crying became louder. That was a mistake. You testified that I murdered the guards. I was afraid. You called the beastkin hostages. I did not know. The truth. You saw them starving on the beach. Mira's lips trembled. Elias repeated the words she had spoken there. Why waste supplies? Her face turned white. She remembered. Everyone did. Mira crawled forward. I can heal people. Humanity needs me. Seraphine descended. Her boots touched the court. The dead saint examined the black corruption inside Mira's hands. You fed holy power into the punishment crown. I was trying to save Cassian. You saw the crowd being crushed. Mira looked down. You continued healing him. Seraphine's black halo rotated. Not one child. Not one civilian. Only the man beside the crown. Mira reached toward Elias. He moved his hand away before she touched his boot. No disgust. No anger. Only refusal. You chose who deserved your healing. Elias pointed toward the refugee quarter beyond the court. Now they will choose whether you deserve theirs. Orin locked a plain iron band around Mira's wrist. It carried no curse, no control. Only a mark visible to every healer in Hollow Haven. Mira stared at it. What does this do? Nothing. Relief entered her face. Then Elias finished. It tells everyone exactly what you did. Mira stopped breathing. No prison held her. No chain dragged her. She was free to leave the court. Free to walk among the injured. Free to ask for food. Free to beg for medicine. The people she had abandoned would decide what she received. She looked toward Cassian's vanished gate, then toward the refugees. No one reached for her. Mira had built her life on being desired. Her punishment was becoming unnecessary. The guild officer tried to crawl backward. Slip's eyes opened inside his shadow. He stopped. Mara read the officer's confessions. He had approved the false report. He had accepted Vale Gold. He had issued Elias's bounty. He had ordered hunters to seize Hollow Haven. He had planned to sell rescued beastkin back into bonded labor. The officer pointed at the surviving expedition members. They agreed. The hunters erupted. He gave the order. He promised pardons. He kept the treasure. He threatened our families. Each betrayed the others faster than the scribes could carve. Elias let them speak. Their panic stripped away every excuse. When they finished, the guild officer discovered that every subordinate had traded his secrets for mercy. He turned toward the nobles. They looked away. He turned toward the priests. They denounced him. He turned toward the hunters. They demanded his execution. The organization he had used to hide responsibility devoured him publicly. Elias did not kill him. He stripped the officer of name, rank, wealth, and authority. Then Brian handed him a shovel. The man stared at it. "What is this?" "Work." The officer looked horrified. Elias pointed toward the mass graves outside the Capitol. "You abandoned the bodies." Brian's dead laborers stood beside the court. "You will recover everyone." "For how long?" "Until no family is waiting for someone you left beneath rubble." The officer's shoulders collapsed. He had spent his life ordering others into danger. Now he would work under a drowned sailor who never tired, never accepted bribes, and never forgot a task. The surviving hunters received different judgments. Those who had confessed before accusation were sent to rebuild roads under guard. Those who had protected civilians during the invasion kept their weapons but lost guild status. Those who had hunted escaped beastkin were brought before the women they captured. Some were sentenced to labor. Some were exiled from every protected settlement. A few were given to the dead priest, who extracted the memories of hidden graves before allowing their victims' families to decide the rest. The Veil Patriarch approached last. He crawled on hands soft from a lifetime of inheritance. "Elias." His voice shook with false warmth. "Your mother was related to our family." Elias waited. "That makes us blood." No one in the court moved. The Patriarch tried again. "Cassian was young, ambitious, misguided. But the Veil family can still support your rule." Sable opened a ledger. The Veil family declared Elias a bastard after his parents died. The Patriarch flinched. They seized his inheritance. Another page turned. They sold his home. Another. They blocked his guild registration. Another. They funded Cassian's expedition under the condition that Elias receive no share of discovered relics. The Patriarch's smile broke. "That was business." Elias looked down at him. "Then this is business." He returned the Veil family documents. Not their land. Not their ships. Only the papers proving what they once owned. The Patriarch clutched them. "What am I supposed to do with these?" Elias repeated the words written in the letter the Veil family had sent after stealing his home. "Survive according to your ability." The court gates opened behind him. No guard stopped the Veil family from leaving. No one offered transport. No one offered food. No one called them kin. The Patriarch looked toward his own relatives. They had already begun blaming him. The family that used blood as a weapon abandoned him before sunset. Then Elias judged the crowd. Not every voice that had mocked him received punishment. Ignorance was not equal to murder. Fear was not equal to betrayal. But no one received free salvation. Mainland refugees who entered Hollowhaven surrendered weapons. They worked for food. They obeyed quarantine. They accepted beastkin officers. They buried their own dead. They learned that protection carried responsibility. Those who demanded privilege were sent outside the walls. Those who attempted theft found undead hands waiting beneath the floors. Those who tried to restore slavery disappeared into Oren's workshops, where every chain they forged was melted into farming tools. The weak were protected. The helpless were fed. The arrogant were made useful. That was Elias's mercy. Nothing wasted. Nothing free. The judgment ended as the mountain began to bleed. Black liquid poured through cracks in the lower city. The Titan's eye opened beneath Hollowhaven. The sealed gates had closed, but the Keeper's final struggle had damaged the ancient boundary. The colossal corpse began waking. Its ribs shifted. Towers cracked. The entire island rose several feet from the sea. Panic spread through the new refugees. Hollowhaven's citizens moved to their stations. They had practiced for disaster. Elias entered the mountain alone. Darius tried to follow. "No." Seraphine lowered her spear. "You may need judgment. I need a conversation." He descended through the buried city. The Titan's heartbeat shook buildings apart. Death energy flooded the streets. Frozen corpses rose without command. Not hostile. Terrified. At the deepest chamber, Elias stood before the open eye. It filled the cavern. Within its pupil, he saw a world drowned beneath black oceans. The Titan had once carried cities across the void. The Keeper chained it. The first sovereign tried to steal it. Saints tried to destroy it. Slavers fed it pain. Everyone had treated the ancient being as land, weapon, resource, or corpse. Elias raised the black and silver key. The Titan's voice entered his bones. "Will you bind me now?" "No." "Will you kill me?" "No." "Then what remains?" "A border." Elias drove the key into the stone before the eye. The authority of the Keeper flowed into the Titan's boundary mark. The Punishment Crown's power became a lock. The Overseer's seal became a door. The gray bone shard became a foundation, but Elias placed the final command upon himself. If he used the key to enslave the Titan, his own soul would be sealed with the Keeper. The condition made betrayal useless. The Titan saw it. The enormous eye narrowed. Why accept the cost? Because you are beneath my city. The chamber became silent. Elias rested one hand on the key. And I dislike unstable foundations. The Titan laughed. The sound broke cliffs from the island's coast. Then its heartbeat slowed. The black blood receded. Its ribs settled. The eye closed. The red gates across the world collapsed into harmless stone arches. The road to the cathedral sealed. The apocalypse ended without a shining god, a heroic speech, or a grateful kingdom. It ended because a necromancer negotiated with a corpse no one else had bothered to understand. Years passed. Hollow havens spread across the island. Bone towers rose beside living forests. Undead farmers worked fields beneath the sun. Beastkin ships crossed restored trade routes. Former refugees built homes under laws they once feared. Orin's workshops turned cursed metal into tools. Brine commanded the greatest harbor in the surviving world. Ash ruled the sky. Slip guarded every shadow road. Vesper's prowler descendants protected the jungles. Atlas raised walls large enough to shelter cities. Seraphine judged those who tried to rebuild the old chains. Darius trained living and dead soldiers beneath one banner. No one starved while grain remained. No one owned another life. No corpse with useful knowledge was discarded. At the center of the empire stood Elias's throne. He sat there rarely. There was always another gate to inspect. Another settlement to build. Another arrogant ruler discovering that dead victims made excellent witnesses. One evening, Lyra found him overlooking the harbor. Ships filled the water. Children laughed near the walls. Undead lantern-bearers walked between market stalls. The civilization Cassian had mocked stretched beyond the horizon. Lyra leaned against the battlement. Do you ever think about forgiving them? Elias watched a prisoner unloading grain under Brine's supervision. No. Do you regret anything? He considered the question. Then he looked toward the mountain where the Titan slept beneath an empire built upon its bones. Only that betrayal produces such poor quality corpses. Behind him, the dead lowered their heads. Ahead of him, the living world continued beneath his law. Elias smiled into the darkness. Death is patient. Karma just enjoys making an entrance. Is less than the end. Is greater than.